We are live, ladies and gentlemen, and the date today is Sunday, March the 17th, 2019. It is St. Patrick's Day today for all you people out there who are celebrating St. Patrick's Day. This is episode 15 of Two Dudes and Some Bullshit. Tony Michael, how the hell are you on this St. Patrick's Day, you Italian you?
I just want to say to my parents, I'm very, very sorry. No, I'm kidding. I can't even fucking repeat that line, even though I just watched the film last night. I'm good, man. Happy St. Patty's Day. Hope you Irish mix out there are, oh, I'm sorry, I can't say that in 2019. Hope you Irish folks out there are having a blast, drinking some good Irish brew on this day and enjoying this glorious St. Patty's Day.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, it is St. Patrick's Day. No offense, I couldn't care less. I'm
Italian, so yeah, I'm still waiting for our day because we got the food. You know what I mean? Like, you could thank us for the food, guys.
Right. And I think, it's funny. People, because my last name is McRae, people will naturally assume that I'm Scottish, obviously. But
you're Irish, not Scottish.
Yeah, no, actually, funny enough, contrary to popular belief, I'm actually very British because my mother, who's no longer here, of course, a lot of people know my parents passed away a few years ago. My mother was born in England and she came to Canada in 1956 when she was 12. So I'm very British. It's like, almost first generation there. And my father, my dad's real dad, his name was Earl Pichet, and he was actually killed in World War II. He was, and the sad thing is that
did he fight in Europe or over in the Pacific?
In Europe, I believe. And he was killed. I stand to be corrected, but I think it was like maybe 4 months before the war ended. It was like, oh my God, like he almost made it. Anyway, his name was Earl Pichet, so that's French. And now my grandmother after that married a man by the name of Bill McRae. And my father just naturally took on his last name.
Okay.
So when my dad married my mother became Patricia McRae. And then, of course, when we were born, we all became McRaes, but we're not actually McRaes because we're not related by blood to Bill McRae. He was my grandfather, certainly, and the only grandfather on my dad's side that I knew, despite the fact that technically he was a step grandfather, if you want to get technical, right? But of course, I considered him my real, now, there is some Scottish in me, but it's further down the line. So funny enough, even though my last name is McRae, technically I'm French and British. So
yeah, is it now with Mick in front of, and I'm talking about the MC part, not the the nickname for Irish people, but with Mick, is that it's either Irish or it's Scottish, right? It's kind of one of the two.
Yeah, I think so. And I think traditionally it's more Scottish, the Mick-Mac thing. I stand to be corrected on that, but that's always been my understanding. And so, like I said, there is some Scottish in my blood on my dad's mother's side down the line. But funny enough, yeah, technically I'm actually not related to a McRae by blood. It's just always been my name because of how it sort of transpired because of how my grandfather was killed. So it's interesting. So yeah, I don't know, but that's the way she does it.
Yeah.
So in this episode, Tony and I are going to be talking the Blair Witch Project. This is hard to believe that it has been 20 years.
We're getting old, man. We're getting old.
Fuck, since the release of the Blair Witch Project. It came out in the summer of 1999. I was 20 years, well, we were 20 years old.
Yeah.
And I remember that summer very well. I was working at, I got cat hair all over my microphone sock here. This is a windscreen for those of you that don't know. Anyway, so I was working at a movie theater. I had just wrapped up, actually, I was done high school and I was in between high school and college, and I was working at a movie theater. And that's when the movie came out. And I remember going to see it. It was all the rage. It was extremely popular. And what was so interesting about the Blair Witch's promotional material is that the internet, for all intents and purposes, for those of you that are maybe not old enough to remember this, the internet was, again, for all intents and purposes, was in its infancy.
Yep.
And certainly it had been around for probably about 10 years prior to that, because I think we just celebrated the 30th year anniversary of the internet this year. But the way we knew the internet in terms of surfing the web and emails and entering the pop culture consciousness, that didn't happen until like 96, 97, 90. I mean, I didn't have my first email address until I was in my last year of high school. So, I mean,
my first email, same thing, was in 98, last year of high school. I think it was Net Zero or something like that. That was my email account or whatever. It was during all the craze of that .com, when everything booming. Everything
exactly. And mine was a Hotmail account, and I still have that email address today. Everything that goes there gets forwarded on to my other accounts now, so I don't really use it per se, but it's still there, and I don't want to get rid of it because it's a nostalgia thing. It was McRae is the email. So but what's funny about it is that I remember while I was working there, I remember that this was it was a big deal because it was the way it is credited as, even though this is up for debate a little bit, it's credited as, and for the most part, the first movie that utilized the internet in a way to market a motion picture in the ways that it did. And because of the kind of movie it was, it was being promoted as that this is legit, that was part of the gimmick, that was part of the shtick. But because the internet was in its infancy, for all intents and purposes, and we didn't have social media, and we didn't have all these entertainment websites, and the only way that you could communicate there were no cell phones, again, for all intents and purposes. I mean, there were, but not like there is now. So nobody was communicating.
Cell phones.
Yeah, nobody was communicating in the ways that we do now. So, it was much easier to fool people into thinking that this is actually real found footage from a documentary crew that went missing in 1994. I mean, this is actually their footage. There were some people that knew it and got it, but there were a lot of people, including my mother, by the way, who thought it was legitimate. And the way they had those mock-up posters, they used the actors' real names, I believe, if I stand to be corrected.
Yeah, Heather Donahue, Josh, I can't remember his last name, and Michael, whatever. Heather's the only one I really know her first and last name. But yeah, they use their real names, and like you said, it's the first time you've seen that. And I mean, we'll get into our experience of seeing it in theaters afterwards. I remember, besides what happened that night, but I remember people walking out of the theater, like girls were legit crying, like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened to them. Like, I can't believe they're showing us this. Like, people really thought this shit was fucking real. And it was great.
Absolutely. And it's something that the reason for that is because it's a very distinct product of the time. It was much easier to do that because people were still learning the internet. The internet was still dial-up, for goodness sakes. I mean, it was still dial-up. So if you guys remember, you were on the internet, and if somebody picked up the phone in your house, you'd be like, oh, fuck! I got kicked off. What are you doing? And this whole idea of the internet, not everybody had it. Not everybody had a computer in their home. So the idea to market this on the internet, using the actors' real names, using missing posters with their real names, by the way, and these are we say actors, but they're unknown actors. It's not like it was Harrison Ford, Tom Hanks, and, Julia Roberts, where you couldn't do that because they were too well known in the pop culture consciousness. These were relatively unknown, quote unquote, actors that nobody knew who the hell they were. So you could use their real names on missing posters and do a website that was, have you seen so-and-so? Have you seen, so-and-so? And people bought into it because nobody knew how the internet worked. Nobody knew that that you could do that you could use the internet to sell, this kind of a movie, to promote a movie in this way. And I remember hearing the trailers online, and it was never, they weren't lying to you. They just weren't telling you. They were withholding information. So as Obi-Wan Kenobi would say, you know, it's all from a certain point of view, right? Sure. It's not like they were necessarily lying. They just weren't telling you, right? So it's not like, you know, if you know what you don't know won't hurt you. And hopefully it turned into box office results, which it did. It became the highest grossing independent movie in motion picture.
It was made for what, barely 60,000, and it grossed over 200 million.
It was like 60,000, and I believe in North America, unadjusted for inflation at that time, it made 155 million.
I mean, that's insane,
ridiculous, and a ridiculous profit.
We're saying 155 domestically in 1999. You have to understand something. Today, that's a common thing. 99. That shit was not happening. And with a horror movie, that shit was really not happening. Like, this thing was a phenomenon. And like you were just touching base there with the actors, you know, I've argued and said single-handedly in a horror, talking just the horror genre now, that their performances for unknown actors are probably some of the best performances in a movie, because when you first saw it, you're like, what the fuck, man? Like, because it makes you feel like this is really real, and they're selling it that it's really real, you know? So you got to give, you know, Mike, Josh, and Heather credit where credit is due, because without their performance and conveying that this is really fucking happening, and they're not fucking laughing around going, yeah, you know, in the woods. Like, you know, when you see Heather's fear in that final moments of the video or the movie before they head into the house, I mean, she's crying, and I mean that's not an easy thing to do as an actor, to get that type of raw emotion that this shit is really going down and it's fucked up. And you got to really give your hats off to their performances in this film.
You absolutely do. And I stand to be corrected on this. And Tony, perhaps you can help me out with these details, but I believe that they were given a blueprint of a script, and they went into the woods. Yep. And a lot of what you're seeing is improvisation. Like they had an idea of what the scene was about, and there were certain points of information that they needed to get across. So in this scene, make sure you talk about this. In this scene, make sure you get this point across. But how you do that, and where you start and where you end, you know, there needs to be this organic, natural flow to this conversation, and it feels so real. It feels natural. It comes across as very organic, because for the most part, it was organic, right? So here's what I want you to say: go and just make it up as you go along. And as actors,
even in the moments there, like when you're watching it, even prior to when the shit goes back crazy, just watching their frustration of getting lost and trying to get home. And I mean, like, you're really watching this, like when I watched it last night again, I was like, damn, man, for guys who and girl and who are not really well-known established actors, they really fucking brought it to the table of how we probably as humans would be reacting in a situation like that, and the type of suspense that it built up, and suspense built up with really no music and sound.
Absolutely. And when you combine that with the time period and everybody going in thinking that this is the scariest movie of all time, under the guise, now again, not everybody, there were a lot of people that knew that this was not, but there was enough people that thought it was real, that was part of the shtick, and they hoped on that. I mean, even the filmmaker said years ago when they were in university, they used to watch, you know, ghost paranormal documentaries and things like that. And they often wondered why there wasn't a movie that was sort of shot documentary style and crazy things happening. And that was sort of I mean, that's a Cole's Notes. I don't know what you have in the States. Crib Notes, I think it is, maybe, perhaps. Yeah. Here in Canada, it's Cole's Notes. It's kind of the same thing, right? Where it's just like, you know, it's to the point of what it was. That's sort of a ballpark version of how they came to this. But that was their idea. And then, of course, you know, the rest is history, but it was planned that way. Like, it wasn't just that they fell into that. They wanted to utilize people's naivety, so to speak, and to sort of capitalize on the internet and you know, really kind of sell that this was real. So that was part of the psychological experience going to see it in the movie theater, was, you know, for those that that thought this was real. There was nothing that was going on. The performances were good enough. They're still really good. They were good enough at that time that when you were watching this, and of course, I believe it was shot on 16 millimeter, if I stand to be corrected. It certainly wasn't shot digitally.
No, it was 16 mil. You're right. And I think what was Heather was using the high 8, wherever my high 8 went to.
Super high 8, or I don't even think mini DV was no, because it's supposed to be 1994.
Yeah.
So there's that 16 millimeter aspect ratio. So when you're watching it on the big screen, like you'd go to the movie theater, and at that time, the movie theaters that you know today with the stadium seating and the 60-foot, screens, they were just starting to become a big thing in the late 90s. When I was working at the movie theater in 1999, I was working at a theater called the Coliseum. Well, it's not called that anymore, had a bit of a name change, but it's the theaters we know today, where, the stadium seating and the big chairs, and you can go back like this, and, the big gigantic, that wasn't what it was like, for the most part. So that was a new experience in and of itself. And because it was shot on 16, it wouldn't fill the entire screen. It would fill like a portion of it. It was like a 4:3 aspect ratio. It wasn't 16:9, at least not that I remember. So it wouldn't fill the whole screen. So that in and of itself was like, oh wow, it's real, it's legit. It wasn't made for the big screen, even though it was, right?
But that's the clever part to the filmmakers, and you got to give the filmmakers credit on this. And this is where I think the most recent Blair Witch kind of failed on.
We'll talk about that. Yeah,
we'll talk about that here in a minute. Whereas the original Blair Witch Project, it made you really feel like you were watching a movie that was put together by amateur filmmakers that, were kind of still green behind the cameras. Heather, just got her little mini camcorder there. Josh got the 16 rolling and whatnot, going back and forth between the black and white and the color footage and whatnot. And it just really had this amateur style feel to it. And I think this is why, and someone briefly here mentioned it in the comment section, this is why Hollywood has failed continuously, with the exception of Paranormal Activity, with regards to the found footage movies, because they tend to, when something becomes successful, now they're like, okay, we got to take it step up a notch, and we got to add this element into it and this element. And then all of a sudden it becomes too polished, and you're like, I'm not watching found footage. It just doesn't look anything like Blair Witch.
You took the words right out of my mouth, and I was we'll talk about that in a second. But as I was doing a Patreon show that I do for level 3 patrons every 2 weeks called the Horror Hour, I was about to touch on that yesterday. And then I thought, no, you know what? I'm going to leave it for the show tonight, because you've hit the nail right on the head, and we're going to expand on that. But before we get into that, it was a very interesting, there was a lot of things. It was a perfect storm. And again, I was working at the movie theater at the time, and there was this thing going around that it was so scary that people were throwing up. Yep. Well, in reality, that's not why people were throwing up. The reason why, and I saw people throw up, so much so that I remember having to go into the movie theater before the show began, and I went in with this girl that I worked with at the movie theater, who I thought was kind of cute. That's probably why I got her to come into the theater with me. We went in with these little mini popcorn bags. So of course, you have your large, your small, your medium, and then there were like these little tiny ones. I don't know if they were for kids or what the hell it was for, but anyway, they were these little tiny bags about like this. And I went in and I said to people that, people have been experiencing motion sickness, because you're watching a movie with a lot of jerking and moving around on a gigantic 60-foot screen. And the execution of the type of movie that is Blair Witch, it's a found footage movie, one of the first of its kind, of course, naturally, because shots are not set up and you're not moving, and it's not a feature sort of live action narrative, how it's shot is going to be very different. And because people are walking and running and doing this and doing that, and you're watching this on a big screen, it gives people motion sickness. Yep. And so that's why people, by and large, were throwing up. But of course, the media use that as, it's so scary, people are throwing up. And that's not why people were throwing up. I remember having to say that. I said at the beginning of the movie, or prior to the movie beginning, I said, thank you for coming to the movie theater, buddy, blah, 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 blah. And I told them exactly that. And I said, if there's anybody in the theater that feels they may suffer from motion sickness, we have little sort of, doggy bags here for you if you want to, if you're not going to make it to the bathroom in time. So it felt kind of weird to say that. And nobody from the theater told me to do that. That was just something on my own that I did because I was working an afternoon shift and somebody had watched, and the matinee was playing. This is like a week prior. And I see this teenage girl come running out of the theater and she doesn't make it to the bathroom and she pukes right onto the carpet. I'm like, oh, isn't that great? And, it's motion sickness. So, and you'd be surprised how many people in the theater all kind of, raise their hands and me, I'll take one. Now, whether anybody actually ended up needing it, for that showing, I have no idea, but that is why, but the media took that and was like, it's so scary. People are becoming sick because it's a great thing to, it's a great marketing tool.
For us in our age group, because we were 19, 20 years old at the time when this came out, this was our Exorcist. This was our Halloween. Everything that everyone got to experience with The Exorcist in 73 and the phenomena that it was back then. And the same thing with Halloween, even though Halloween was kind of a slow build up before it kind of hit its crescendo and became, popular, the lexicon of pop culture. Blair Witch for us, I can't think of a film where we're at that age, teenagers now, that really in a horror genre that had that type of impact. And since I don't think nothing, prior to it that, we're too young, we weren't even born. But, in our age group at that time, Blair Witch probably was the only horror film that had that type of cultural success.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And something I did go to the movie. I did see it. Obviously, I remember I got to see it for free because I was working at the movie theater at the time. So one of the perks of working at the movie theater at the time was you get to see, I think, I don't know if there was a limit. Certainly there'd be a limit throughout the day. Yeah. But we got to see movies for free, which was always nice. And I remember seeing it probably a Saturday night, maybe. And I remember liking it, but I remember, and I still feel this way to this day. I don't hate the Blair Witch Project. I don't. But I think I like the concept and its marketing better than I liked the movie. It was brilliantly marketed, which is why it made $155 million. And I think its concept is brilliant. And I think there are certain aspects of the movie that I really like. Overall, it is definitely, and because you are essentially watching found footage, quote unquote. So obviously it's going to be unpolished. It's going to have sort of a less organic, a more, avant-garde, dysfunctional kind of feel to the picture and the editing and things like that, to a point. I mean, obviously there has to be a narrative from A to B that you have to tell, but it's slow in some parts, and certainly there's a lot of parts where there's nothing going on, and that is then, because there's not a lot going on, you have to really become emotionally attached to the characters because they have to then carry those scenes that are where there's not much going on. So I certainly think it was, I think it's a better example of marketing than it is necessarily a great horror movie. I think The Exorcist is far better. I think a lot of far better horror movies, but certainly it was definitely, its concept was brilliant. And because it was the first time that we had ever seen anything quite like that.
Yeah, when you talk about the marketing material here I still have the original VHS that I got in late 99 is when it came out, or early 2000, one or the other.
In great condition. Oh
yeah, and the marketing material in here is still here, like with the Blair Witch hat, the missing, you can't really see that, but the missing poster that you were talking about. I mean, yeah, you're right. You hit it on the nail with regards to the marketing material. See, the thing for me with Blair Witch Project, I don't know if you're a Friends fan, the TV show, but there's an episode where Joey takes a girl out to dinner and he eats his dessert and the girl hasn't eaten her dessert yet and he's looking at it, he's eyeing it down and she's kind of like not touching it. He wants to eat it, doesn't eat it. Then she gets up and goes to the bathroom and then he fucking chows it down and she comes back and he's got chocolate all over his face and he just looks up at her and he's like, I'm not even sorry. That's how I feel about Blair Witch. It's one of my favorite horror movies. I watch it every October, and I have since this film came out, and I'm not even sorry. I don't care. I know there's a lot of people that don't like this film, but I think as far as someone who has urban explored my entire life, gone into abandoned homes and whatnot, that's I thought one of the best payoffs at the end there at Rustin Parr's house was that's what it really looks like when we go urban exploring. You know, like that's what I didn't like in Blair Witch, the one that just came out here recently. I feel like, wait, this doesn't look anything like what it would look like for us. Even with modern technology, DSLR cameras, this is not what it's going to look like. But back then, when you're looking at this found footage and they're in the house wandering through it, and what I'm like, yeah, this is what it's like when we're going into an abandoned house. And like I said, everything else, what I've already talked about, you know, leading up to it, how you're introduced to these unknown actors at the time and just their whole performance from start to finish, you know, and just the intensity that they were able to build up and how the editors of this film were able to put it all together with, I mean, nothing. There's no sound. There's no musical score. I mean, that is not an easy thing to do. And I thought it was very well paid off. And yeah, like I said, I watched this thing. It's a guarantee every October I will throw this into the VCR and watch it.
Yeah, that is definitely, I mean, as somebody who really appreciates sound and understands that sound can make or break not just a movie, but you can, if you know how to utilize sound, if you know how to mix sound and master sound and where to place certain things, you can scare your audience on sound alone. And there's a great quote from Roger Ebert where I'm paraphrasing, but he says, you know, often the sound in the dark is far scarier than whatever it is that makes that sound in the dark. And that goes back again to being able to understand that from a psychological perspective, it's that, you know, people laugh at, you know, at the beginning of my videos, you know, you'll hear me say, it's what you think you see, it's what you think you hear. Well, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about theater of the mind. And it's a very specific type of skill set to be able to pull it off. You don't see it too often these days. But Blair Witch was, you know, you have to give credit where credit is due. And even though I may not say it's one of my favorite horror movies, I really do like it. Yeah. Because I like the concept, and I thought it was a brilliant marketing campaign and a brilliant concept that made the movie scarier. I think if the marketing had not been there for it, I don't know if the movie would have had the broad appeal that it had, because a big part of that success was relying on people thinking this was real. And so, you know, it was great. Now, in terms of do you want to talk about your experience going to see it for the first time?
Yeah. Well, see, here's the thing. You know, I've been a horror buff since I was a kid. And, you know, I'm like, when I went with my group of friends, I'm like Mr. Horror guy, you know, and like, you know, whatever, and big Mr. Macho and all this stuff like that. I just felt like there was nothing other than The Exorcist. The Exorcist is still, even to this day, it's the only film that ever creeps me out. It gets under my skin, and that's what I love it. You know, I love that type of scare. I need something to really creep me out psychologically. And so I go into this, you know, with my group of friends that night, like, Mr. Big Shot, yeah, no, this movie's not gonna fucking scare me. So I decide to smoke a little weed and drop a little acid at the same time. Well, let me just tell you something, man. I was tripping balls, and this movie freaked me the fuck out. I mean, I literally sat there in the chair like this because I was tripping, and I was at a bad peak of the trip. Oh my God. And it was, I don't remember I can't say for sure if it was when she was running out of the tent screaming, what was that? Or if it was a few beats before that, or a scene before that where it really my trip started to escalate. And I was like, guys, I can't do this. And it was because of that. I don't know, maybe because of that experience and going through that, that's what I like about the film. But even watching it sober and not under the influence of anything, I still thoroughly enjoy it. But yeah, that night when we first saw the film, oh my God, dude, I still remember it. I was like in the fetal position on my chair, freaked the fuck out. What about you?
You know, what's funny? I can't really remember. I mean, I remember sitting there and I remember watching the movie, and I remember, but I can't really remember my feelings on it.
Yeah.
You know, it's just so weird. I don't know. I can't really remember my feelings on it. I wish I could.
Yeah, no, like I think because of that, I think, you know, I mean, look, I mean, first of all, you know, anything that's like trippy stuff, I'm not like a big promoter of. I think I did that only like twice in my life. And there was like one time I was in school suspension for some nonsense, whatever, that I disagreed with, because I always disagreed and debated with my teachers on shit. So I thought that would be a good day to take acid and trip out and have fun. And then the second time in my life would be at the Blair Witch Project, and the last moment of my life of ever doing anything of that type of influence, and being under the influence of something. And I don't know, it just like, and I remember my friends still give me shit to this day about it, of just,
right,
like I said, being in the fetal position on a chair and just totally freaked the fuck out on this film. And obviously a big part of it was being, you know, under the influence. I think had I just smoked, I would have been fine. I would have been chilled and everything would have been cool. But even, you know, like I said, I saw the film like 4 times in theater. And I remember, like I said, a couple times afterwards where I wasn't under the influence on anything. There were times, man, walking out of the theater, there were girls literally bawling their fucking eyes out. And I was just like, wow, this is like, you know, it's a huge difference walking out of a movie theater when you're seeing a bunch of teenage girls crying because Leonardo DiCaprio is sinking at the bottom of the ocean in Titanic, you know, versus to seeing people really emotionally bothered by a movie. Like that was a very surreal experience. And I don't hate to say it, because I think it's a very cool thing to experience as a moviegoer, and to witness people reacting that way to a film, because you don't see that too often. So I'm glad that I at least have that once in my life. And who knows, maybe there's another movie that's, you know, down the pipe here that will come out down the road that will have that same reaction. But that's probably, of all the things of my theater experience beyond the first time going to see it, but it was really afterwards and going back and seeing it, and seeing, like I said, seeing the females' reaction. It was mostly the girls, you know, just really just upset and bothered by that. And I was like, wow, I cannot believe this movie's having this type of impact on so many people.
Yeah, no, you're right. And the thing is too, one thing I do remember was, and funny enough, this sounds bad because I mean, it was so long ago. Like I remember watching it and I remember really enjoying it, but I remember really loving the end credit sequence.
Yeah.
And the reason is because of just that soundscape that played.
Yeah.
And it was eerie and it was creepy and it was very effective. And I remember as I was leaving the theater really liking that. I'm a huge proponent on one of the things that I don't like about horror movies. And there's a few unless you're Alice Cooper and The Man Behind the Mask. I mean, that's just a classic song. But, you know, and The Dream Warriors, I mean, that's a good song too. But by and large, I don't like when horror movies end on this real kind of, and all of a sudden there's this rock song that takes you to the end credits and it takes me out of the moment that I'm feeling. Like I'm feeling this moment. Like imagine if The Conjuring ended, right? And it kind of ends with, you know, you see that, you know, that little thing, and it just kind of goes, and all of a sudden you hear, what you thinking down? It's like, wow, fuck, I wanted to feel that. I wanted to, that lingering sort of, you know, where you cut to black and you have that little kind of, you know, sound effect there. And I want to feel that. I want to just have the credits roll, maybe have something really light underneath, you know, and let me feel that. Let me take the movie with me. And when you break that with any sort of rock music or song, and of course, way back then, it was there was a contract in place for music. It was marketing, right? It was they get their song in the movie, the end credits, and it helps, you know, this new band that's up. It's a whole thing. You don't see too much of it nowadays, but back in the 80s and the 90s, that was a big thing that happened a lot, especially with horror movies. And for me, I'm a huge proponent of wanting to take the movie with me. And I think when I think of the other side of the coin as a filmmaker, I think if I was making a movie, I'd want my end credits to reflect. I don't want my audience to have a break and they're leaving the movie theater kind of totally emotionally disconnected from the end of the movie. If like it, I just don't want to. I mean, imagine watching a Star Wars movie and then at the end, you know, all of a sudden, and you know, the credits roll and it's not. No, it's. It's just like, what the fuck? Like you whatever you were feeling before, right at the end of the movie, you no longer feel because that emotional connection was broken. And so the one thing I loved about the Blair Witch Project in the end was it just ended, you know, with the camera on the ground and the reel going.
Right.
And then it stops. And then the credits just roll. And it's that weird, eerie soundscape. And I remember thinking, yeah, now that's how you fuck. I love that shit.
Yep.
That I remember quite clearly and quite fondly. So anyway, so now you fast forward a year later. It's the year 2000. I'm in college. And I remember being out for a run and running past this movie theater at the local mall. I went to college in Welland, Ontario, Canada. For those of you that don't know where that is, that's pretty much Niagara Falls, okay? And Welland is about 15, 20 minutes west of Niagara Falls, whatever it is. It's all down there. And so I was out for a run, and I remember it being, I don't know if it was it had to have been the fall or the winter, I guess, because it couldn't have been the summer because I wouldn't have been there. Anyways, I remember running and seeing on the marquee outside of this old theater that is no longer there, seeing something like The Sixth Day with Arnold, something like that. And then, of course, I saw Blair Witch, Book of Shadows. And I remember thinking, what the fuck is that? So I went home and of course, I didn't Google it. I think I Yahoo'd it and back to my dorm room. And I was like, oh, it's the sequel to the Blair Witch Project. And then, of course, I find out that it's actually a movie within a movie.
Right.
And
yeah,
I saw the movie and I thought it was a pile of dog shit.
Basically. I rewatched it last night again, and look, it's easy to bash on a movie that literally is a fucking train wreck. It's the easy thing to do. I went into it to say, okay, let's look for the positives. Okay, the concept of what they were trying to attempt to do with Book of Shadows, I get it. Capitalism, cash grabbing, because that's basically the concept of, the popularity and the hype of Blair Witch Project. Now there's this whole phenomena and people are, capitalizing on this area of Maryland. And you got all these people going out to Maryland to walk through these woods to look for the Blair Witch. I get what they were doing. I don't know if it was the cast or if it was the directors, or if it was the producers who added in scenes that I found out later on, which was totally not the direction that the director wanted to go, which is why I don't believe producers should ever be involved in the creation of a movie, that their job simply is to get the funds for the movie and get the shit distributed. Do not get involved with the creative process. Like, for example, what the producers added in Book of Shadows was a lot of the killing scenes that you see in Book of Shadows. And to me, I always felt like that's what made Blair Witch so well, is that you didn't see shit. I mean, except for, okay, you can argue and say the one scene there where Heather finds Josh's teeth. Okay, all right, there's that one moment. But in Book of Shadows, it took it up a notch to a level that I don't think it should have went to. I think the concept of what they were doing was good. It was a fucking train wreck, because it was just like, where are we going with this movie? There were a couple of good performances where not Heather, Erica, she's the redhead in that movie. She plays the earthy witch. She's also in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre reboot with Jessica Biel. She's fucking hot, first of all. So she makes the movie at least worth entertaining to watch. Plus she dances around a tree naked, and who doesn't want to see a pretty naked girl dancing around a tree? I do. And then the dude who plays Jeff, who's the guy who heads up this whole his business, that he's going to take these guys out into the woods and lead them out there. And he's got this whole, abandoned warehouse for a house and whatnot out in the middle of no man's land. I thought his performance and, his character was really good. I just felt like everyone else surrounding them, they weren't like the couple there. Like I wasn't signing up for it. I wasn't signing up for that. The Tristan, I think was her name. She becomes possessed by Ellie, the witch, and all. I was like, no. I think had they just stayed on board with the concept of, this is based on events that happened shortly after the Blair Witch, that phenomena. People came out here, shit got a little bit fucking batshit crazy, and this is the story. I think had they kind of stayed with that approach and then not, again, like I said, get the producers involved, which all of a sudden they started adding in fucking different scenes and trippy moments throughout the movie that you're just like, okay, this totally came out of nowhere. It doesn't make absolutely any sense. That's why Book of Shadows, is what it is. Again, good concept, shitty execution.
Yeah. Before I get into that, I just want to say that I've removed a gentleman from the chat by the name of Felix. I forget his last name there. And look, I'm a huge proponent on being able to say what you want and how you want and all that kind of stuff. And I very rarely remove anybody from a chat room. But the reason when it gets juvenile, okay, like, yeah, you know what, I'm gonna fucking murder your mom and spread her guts all over now it's no longer about the topic of discussion. And if you can't, articulate your thoughts, if you can't fight with knowledge, so to speak, and not that I want anybody to fight, but I'm just saying that, once it gets really fucking dumb like that's like, just get out. Like you're then not contributing. If people want to have a healthy debate in the chat and go back and forth, be like, dude, I disagree. Nah, man, I disagree. Even if there's a couple of F-bombs, right? Fuck you, man. I don't, but it's a healthy debate. I like that kind of shit. Sure. But when people start saying I'm going to murder, that has nothing to do with anything. What the fuck does that have anything? It's nothing to do with anything. So that's why he was removed.
So anyway, the sad part is that this is probably a grown adult. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't get that. 100%. Like, we're grown adults. Like,
100%. Yeah. Like I want people to
by definition, I call an adult at least 16 years of age. You know the difference between acting like an idiot and acting mature. Okay.
Well, and first of all, Wes Carpenter here is a gentleman by the name of Luke Russell, as far as I know. And Wes, or Luke, if I might add, I believe that's your name. Don't come to me for sympathy when you have on many occasions told me that you're glad my parents have died of cancer. So fuck off. And you're not going to get any sympathy out of me, buddy. So, if I were you, I would put a lid on it. So, and I don't know what you're talking about in terms of people hacking your account. Anyway, so let's
back on track. Book of Shadows.
Book of Shadows. So this is the kind of thing that where it comes to Book of Shadows, I just wasn't a big fan of. I get what you're saying. I like where they were going with it. I like that they were sort of like it was I think they felt sort of hogtied, where it's kind of like we had we had great success, but they were faced with sort of the typical thing that people are faced with when they want to do a sequel, right, which was essentially, if do we do a sequel to but what are we going to do? Because if we just are we going to go back to the woods and that, because eventually you're just essentially doing the same thing over again. And I understood what they were trying to do. And again, I haven't seen that movie in years, but I remember thinking, I get it, but it felt a little.
They tied it too much into, like, we already knew the big reveal that the Blair Witch was fake. Yes. We already knew that. So now you're trying to tie in that this is still a real thing, rather than taking the concept of the Blair Witch hysteria and maybe fictionalizing an event that happens out there with a group of people that go out there and maybe took things a little bit too far.
Right.
I would have thought into that a little bit more, rather than the witches possessing this girl and like, no, we already know this shit ain't true. We're not buying it, but telling me that, well, some people went out there. This is based on, events that took place and shit got out of hand. That I could buy into, because that typically happens when something becomes such a huge phenomena. Shit gets out of hand, and that, I think they should have stayed. That should have been the path they should have stayed on.
Right. No, exactly. And it's just that it just felt a little too, it just felt like they were trying to target a certain demographic that I didn't particularly care about. It felt, Book of Shadows to me felt much more juvenile in its presentation, much more rudimentary in its presentation, even though they were trying to expand the mythology a little bit. Yeah. It just felt a little more a teeny bopper horror movie.
Yeah.
Whereas the first Blair Witch had a very sort of, but again, once the magic trick is revealed, right, as you said, I mean, once you find out that the Blair Witch Project is not real, the cat's out of the bag. There's only so much you can do then for a sequel. And it becomes sort of a, I don't know. It becomes interesting. I'm not entirely sure where they could have gone or where they would have gone. But yeah.
I think they were on the right page, like I said, a few moments ago. But the producers of this film really, I think that and I think someone mentioned this, and you're right, because I remember seeing this where the director of Blair Witch Book of Shadows talked about his original concept of what he wanted to do. It's a night and day difference. And I would have rather seen his concept, of Book of Shadows. I think the sequel would have been, I'm not saying the sequel would have been better than the original, but it probably would have been respectable. It would have been something that we can all sit back and go, oh yeah, it was a decent, sequel to not like the original, but it was decent. But again, this is, why I'm a firm believer, and I think many people agree with this, that producers should not be involved in, making decisions on where films should go. If you ever get a chance to, and just a quick side note here, watch Crystal Lake Memories, and you listen to the different concepts and why like Friday the 13th really ended up kind of falling apart as the series progressed. It was because producers got involved in this shit. And they're like, oh, we need to add this in. Oh, we need to add like more kills in here, like with Friday the 13th Part 6, which is one of my favorite sequels. And it was a really good sequel. They added in a fucking unnecessary death scene between a couple in the woods. Totally fucking random, played by a different dude in the Jason outfit. And they're on their little motorbike and whatnot. It was just an unnecessary kill scene. But once again, producers gotta have what they, they gotta, show their manhood and whatnot. And my dick's bigger than yours. And we're going to put this extra death scene in here because we think it needs to happen when it really doesn't need to happen. So I think that's unfortunately the problem with Book of Shadows. Look, I don't knock the actors on there, and I'm not discrediting them. Look, they all came in. I'm sure they were super psyched to be a part of this franchise, even the director. And like I said, like what this person said here a few moments ago in the chat room, the original concept of what the director wanted to do, unfortunately for him, we didn't get that. And I would have loved to have seen his concept brought to us on the big screen.
I agree with that. I think it's funny because, I don't, this is the problem. If we could move into Blair Witch from 2016.
Yes.
The problem is that this is the sequel that they should have done. Yep. Okay. Hang on. I can't see you. Where are you? There you are. This is it's the sequel they should have done. But the fact of the matter is that the problem with Blair Witch from 2016, it was too produced. Right. It was way too overly produced. And
that's
to the
one
point,
of my big issues that I rewatching that last night, I'm like, Jesus, man, this thing is too polished.
Right, exactly. And there comes a point where you like the problem is that when you are trying to do a sequel to the Blair Witch Project in the vein that they were doing with Blair Witch, I like the idea. I thought it was a great idea. I like the concept. The problem is that the sound design was way too produced, and everything you're hearing in the woods sounds too mixed, too mastered, too stereo, too, digital. Like it doesn't sound like it's coming from the elements. Okay. Yeah. It doesn't sound like it's in the space for which the characters are. It sounds like it's been mixed and mastered, which obviously all sound would have to be, yeah. But it sounds too produced, it doesn't sound like it's coming from over there, and that it's an actual organic noise being presented in the environment. That's one of the things that was great about the original Blair Witch, is that everything sounded like it was in the environment. They only had $60,000. They had to use it wisely. That does not mean they didn't add some sound. They obviously did, but they utilized, it was the what you think you see, what you think you hear, way in the, it's that knock in the woods. It's way over. It's everything sounded like it was coming from the environment. In Blair Witch, which I just watched a couple of weeks ago, there's moments in there where there's like that or whatever it was. And it's like, it doesn't sound like it's in the environment. I don't hear the reverb. I don't hear the echo. I don't hear what it sounds like. If it's, not, it just sounds like it's, I think
Adam Ring, what was his name again? Adam
Wingard, I think.
He's a sound guy. That's his background. Like, and I think he overkilled it with that the sound of the jump scares. It just seemed like that's what he was relying on rather than the natural elements of creating suspense from what the original film did versus to like what you're talking about. He was relying too heavily on those big loud sounds for those jump scares, because after a while, honestly, I just got really annoyed with it. It wasn't even scaring me. It was just like, okay, how many more times are you going to try to do this loud boom for a jump scare? You know what I mean?
Right, right, exactly. And how many times they would bump into each other, and it didn't feel that he was utilizing the elements as a character. You see, in the original Blair Witch, the environment and the pacing of that movie, although it was a little slow at first, the environment and the pacing of that movie, you were utilizing sort of, it becomes a character. Whereas the focus in Blair Witch was too much on the actual human characters and not enough on the what is out there. Right. What is out there? And when you present what actually is out there, all of a sudden it becomes far too produced. Now, was there a music soundtrack in Blair Witch? I can't remember.
If there was, it was, well, I mean, there's a scene there where they're at the club, so there's music playing there. I can't oh yeah, there is a scene where the kid's driving in the car and there's like a rock tune playing. So there is some moments where there is some music, but it's very low key. There's not a lot of scenes where there's a lot of music. Now, as far as when they're in the woods, no. Again, he was relying too much more on that loud banging sound, and even the cackling sound that you heard in the original film. He amplified it too much in this that I was like, yeah, bro, you're taking me away. You're taking me out of this. Like, why are we going here with it? Not only that, my other question to him would be, okay, if you're presenting this as a found footage, very similar to the original film, why are we polishing this up with, with the head cameras that there's no way they're going to look this clear at night? Sorry, there's no way.
Well, yeah, and not only that, like it's correct me if I'm wrong.
Huh?
Well, I just some of the acting was poor. I found it. I found that there was a few decisions that some of the characters would make that were incompetent decisions. And I felt very similar to sort of how I was feeling when I was watching A Quiet Place, where in order for the narrative to continue, we have to have these characters make incompetent decisions. There were some things that they were constantly bumping into each other. And the one thing I did like about Blair Witch, the 2016 film, is I wish they would have sort of focused on that a bit more, because I thought it was an interesting concept, was the whole thing about loss of time and about appearing to be in some sort of time warp or something to that effect. That I found a very interesting concept. And whether or not they wanted to utilize that a bit more or whether they didn't want, I wish they would have, because I think that could have been something that was very different from the first movie that they could have glommed onto and utilized a bit more. I would have gotten rid of the hick characters that they met to take them out to the woods. Completely unnecessary. I don't understand.
I absolutely agree. I felt like
unnecessary.
There was no need. They where you're going. You know where you need to go to the Black Hills. Okay. I mean, just whatever. I agree. I thought that that you didn't need them, or if you were, they could have been a footnote at the beginning before they went off into the woods. I just felt like having them out there. I get why in the payoff there in the house, in Rustin Parr's house, because the kid is still alive. I understand that, but I agree with you on that 100%.
Yeah. No, it's I think that the end of the movie was quite interesting. And of course, but the thing with the end of the movie, I mean, it was fun. It was visually well done. It was all built on a sound stage. I believe that house was all built on a stage. So it was all inside. And it was fun because it was extending what the original Blair Witch Project had started. Yep. So because you only saw so much in the house, and now they do quite a bit in the house. And of course, there's that there's that scene that I actually quite liked with the girl, and she's underground or something, and she gets stuck, and that's very sort of, that reminded me of The Descent, you know, very claustrophobic. That shit gets me all the time. There's some good things in there at the end, but again, it becomes I don't really feel like I'm watching that home movie documentary kind of thing, because the movie overall is very overly produced. And I understand that today you wouldn't be out there with a 16mm film camera.
No,
but
it could have been out there simply just with DSLRs, used with what the technology of today versus to like what the technology they were using back in quote 1994. Use the same thing. What's popular with young adults that you have in this film would be DSLR cameras, whether you want to use the Canon 80D or the Canon 70D or whatever, the Panasonic GH5 or the, you know, one of the Sony A7 cameras. That's the way I would have done it. Not only would I have done it strictly with just DSLR cameras. In today's day and age, if you're going to have young adults going out into the woods, somebody should have been out there with a camera taking photographs, because again, you're tapping into what is a common theme that young adults are doing when they're out in the woods. They're creating those wanderlust type photographs and documenting it and things like that. So I would have had someone out there with a camera, you know, whether it be film or DSLR, documenting it with still images as well too. They had a drone in it, which was used for 2 scenes. And it was like, why did you even have it here? Because it was really, there's no point to having this drone in there. I would have, again, utilized more of the drone. And again, maybe taken some beats that you see off of YouTube, create some time lapses and things like that to make it more catered to today's movie-going audience and young adults, and how young adults would be out there with the limited amount of equipment they would have to create this type of documentary. But like you said, it was just so polished that like, no, I didn't like it that way. I thought that was the one thing that they were missing on this film. And just that one little critique, I think, would have made this film even that much more of a better direct sequel to the original film.
Yes. My issues with Blair Witch is it's more of the same. And I think that's why I think, like I said, I really enjoyed the time warp aspect of this narrative, because it's different, and something that was different and extended, said was fresh. It was new information, something that was maybe not experienced, or maybe experienced by the original group in the Blair Witch, but we were unaware of it. And they could have got onto that. They could have extended that. They could have actually figured out that, holy shit, are we experiencing a time warp of such? Did Heather experience this, right? And maybe they start to focus on that rather than just making louder noises in the woods, because that's really all Blair Witch was. It was the same movie, but with louder noises in the woods. And it was the same ending, but with a louder ending, a much more involved ending, because now we have more money and we can spend more time, and let's have it raining, and let's have it lightning, and let's have her running over here. Sorry?
Which was so unnecessary. The raining and lightning, I just thought that was way unnecessary.
Yeah, well, I didn't mind that, but it just felt like we're just doing the same thing, but bigger. And that's why it, okay, but now you're running the risk of feeling overly produced. And it didn't feel small to me. It didn't feel like these, and the acting, there were some moments when the acting was really subpar. I mean, really, especially from the woman that got that thing in her foot and she's in the, now why have her foot make that weird, like as if there's some kind of creepy crawler under her skin? That, to me, it bears no impact on the overall narrative whatsoever, unless somebody can correct me. I don't remember us ever finding out what the hell that was about. That is just, oh, I know, this will be cool. Why don't we have it go, you know, and then people will go, oh, but why? Right. Focus on something. Who cares if you're not going to have us figure out what's going on? Like, the Blair Witch gets under your skin. She's got some disease. No, it was just so we can go for like 2 seconds, and that's it. It makes no sense to me, and that's why when although I didn't quite like the Hick characters, when he showed back up or something and he's like, dude, are you guys okay? Like, it's been like 4 days, man. It's been like whatever it was. I actually liked that concept. Now, because he was quite eccentric himself, I didn't know if to believe him. Is he being serious? Is he not being serious? But I think if they had gotten rid of them and it was just the four of the two the two couples, essentially, if it was just them and they had woken up the next day and it was like 5 p.m. and they're like, that's not possible. Like, how can it be 5 p.m.? I don't understand this. And then that starts to become part of the mystery. And it's like, what's going on here? And then, well, this is really weird. My clock says it's Thursday and we arrived here on Tuesday, but that was just yet. How is this happening? Is there a time? And you spend that time developing this creepy narrative now around that, which eventually leads you to the house of course, but the fact that the house, that nobody can find the house, says to me, like, when as soon as I found out from that news report that they're like, and there's been no sign of the house, nobody has been able to find this house, supposedly, all that kind of jazz. I remember thinking, oh, is the house actually in another dimension? And they go to a certain area of the woods, and unbeknownst to them, when they go to sleep at night, they actually cross into a parallel universe. Like, that kind of fucking shit is interesting. But everything looks the same, so it gives you the impression that you're actually still in the same spot at the same time in the same universe. So that's something that might have been interesting. And then you can have your creepy noises in the woods or, whatever it is. But the fact that they just decided to do the same thing but louder, it just kind of, and sort of abandoned they kind of said, okay, well, there's clearly something going on here with time, but they never focused on that. And that was something that I wish they would have done.
No, I absolutely agree. It was kind of, they skimmed the surface with it and didn't really it's like they had something there with it, and I wish they would have. And I agree with you with regards to the performances. Lisa, the girl that you're talking about, the one in the tunnel, I thought she was great. Her performance was really good. The kid who plays Heather's brother, he was good. There were some moments I thought his scenes, his performance were a little bit weak. But I don't ever like to really criticize actors. I never believe in that, because look, at the end of the day, I know they're showing up. They're doing the best they can. They're given the script that they're given. But I agree with you. I thought the hillbillies that they brought along with them, there was really no need for that. I know we mentioned that a few moments ago, but overall, I think they were in the right direction. I like the fact that they didn't do fall again. They went and did it during the spring or summer. So that was cool, because I do think that there are creepy elements to the spring and summer out in the woods, especially someone like myself who does go out very frequently into the woods in the summertime, camping and shit like that. There are definitely some elements. It's not always in the fall. So I like that. But I agree with you. The overdone process of the imagery of this film, imagery meaning the quality of film that
right, exactly.
It's just too polished. I thought that had they stuck to like I mentioned here a few moments ago, had they stuck with the DSLR concept and really just stayed with that, we got some more use out of the drone that they were using, because again, drones are very big and popular today. Time lapses, you could almost have like borderline this into a vlog type thing. Or had someone vlogging. Maybe you could have had someone out there vlogging and whatnot, tapped into that, like not make it a big part of the movie, but maybe one of the actors is, you see them, they got the camera in front of them and they're doing their vlog shit. Because again, that's what made the original one so effective, because they were using the equipment of the time back in 1994 and everything around that video, even just the way, you look at the way Heather and Josh and Mike were dressed, very much in that early 90s grunge style look with the flannels and shit, and the beards and whatnot, and just the whole attitude, you could just tell was just very early 90s. This film, if you're going to present it in that found footage type way, you should have stuck with what today's thing and what the capability of how far you can push that technology that's capable to young adults. When we're watching this looks like, okay, these are young adults going out into the woods with a film crew. Ultimately that's what it looked like.
Yes. Sorry, I was just thinking about what you were saying, and it's just, do you want to know what it is? It's like, it's interesting because it makes sense. Do you know what I mean? Like it makes sense to actually go that way and actually progress the narrative in a way that is to progress the narrative in a way that does, like, I like the idea of having her younger brother go back to look for her. I like that. But again, it was too overly produced for me, and the acting was nowhere near as it was too scripted. And not that there wasn't some improv in there, but I highly doubt that there was as much improv in this that there was in the original film. And I don't think the acting was strong. And again, I don't want to sound like a broken record here, but it was just more of the same, just louder and bigger. And I think it would have been better if they, like I said, if they had focused on that time warp thing, because that's interesting. Sure. Don't you think that's interesting? Like, imagine they go out there and then it becomes this investigation. Like, they find clues, they find maybe, a person's body decomposing. Like, wow, was that somebody that came out here to look for the Blair Witch? Oh, dude, it's that fucking missing person that nobody's been able to find. It's like the Goonies when they find that, Chester Copperpot, and they find his wall. They're like, it is Chester Copperpot, and they're like, holy shit, it is John, Schmecker Rocker or whatever. And they're like, how come nobody was able to find them? Well, maybe because they're in I would have gone that way. And I think if you had done it right, it wouldn't have been hokey, because you still would have been grounded. You're not so much, you're not focusing so much on just bigger and louder. You're focusing on still keeping that creepy factor there and letting the environment become the character.
Agreed.
Letting the environment become the star. Have them walk, because this movie essentially takes place in one location, just at that campsite. And then they walk around and they come back to that, campsite, so to speak. And I think it would have been better if they had continued on and found more clues and weird things. And maybe there's like another hut they find that's not the home, but it's another weird hut, and they go in there and maybe there's some, drawings on the wall, and they have to, they're on this adventure to decipher not only, to not only see if they can find what happened to Heather, but to actually figure out more about the Blair Witch at the end of the day. So I think I don't know. I think that's maybe what they should have done.
Yeah. And just a quick moment, I want to help a few people out in the chat room, because unfortunately tonight we've had a bunch of juvenile, immature people in here. So here's a little tip for you guys. When you're scrolling through the chat and you want to block someone, or you don't want to see what they're posting or saying on there, you simply go to that person's name, and with your mouse, you are going to left click on it. And it's going to give you three options. You can go to the channel, you can report the person, or you can block the person. Click on block. When you click on block, that's going to hide everything that they post. So everything that you'll still see them in the chat, and it'll just say message hidden. So therefore, you just don't acknowledge them, you block them, and you call it a day, and it's done, it's over with, and you've taken their 2 minutes of fame that they're looking for out of their hands. So that would be my suggestion for those of you, rather than just asking me and Dave to block people from the chat room, just right click on it, hit block on it, and you'll see their name pop up, but you'll never see what they're saying.
Oh, there you go. Perfect. I didn't know that. I very rarely feel the need to block somebody, so that's good to know. So yeah, I mean, if you want to do that, if there's somebody in the chat room that you feel is annoying you, or you'd rather not see their words or whatever it is, then yeah, feel free to go on and right click and block whoever it is that you feel that you need to block. So yeah, good job, Tony. I wasn't aware of that. I don't know. Is there?
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Mayhem going on right now in the chat. I haven't been paying attention to it. Is there like a lot of shit going on?
Yeah. There's just been a few people in here tonight, unfortunately, just, acting like 12-year-olds. Chances are they're probably 12 years old, and just, getting under the chat's nerve rather than just being mature adults and just, feeding off of our conversation and what we're talking about. But I was kind of looking through here, seeing like what options people could do in the chat room so that you don't have to see it. You can just block it. And there you go. And it's done deal. And you again, like I said, you're not blocking the individual. You're going to see something that they are sharing something, but you're not going to see what they're saying, which basically takes all their fuel for their fire out of their hands, because you don't have to respond to it because you're not seeing it.
Right. Exactly. So, I'm just scrolling back here. I don't really see what's been going on, but, guys, if anybody is annoying the hell out of you, then by all means, just, block them. I mean,
Ooh,
that's what you have to do.
James Box
So
said something pretty good, and I agree with him. I think
what's happened?
he's James Box. He said, I think A24 could make a good Blair Witch film. I agree with you. If I got something in an A24 format, I'd be very fucking happy.
Yes, I agree with that. I think that A24 has got a new movie coming out this summer called Midsummer, and summer with an
Yeah,
O, Sommer, and it's directed by the same guy who directed Hereditary. So if you haven't checked out that trailer, go on and check out that trailer. And I think you'll really I think it looks really interesting. So I'm excited.
You mean
To
it's
see
not
that.
like the new movie that's about to come out, which is the scariest movie of all time, Us?
Oh, right.
In
Well, I'm interested to see what that's going to be like.
inside joke. There was somebody marketed at they're marketing. I can't say the movie is marketing itself that way. I think it was someone who wrote that and they're using it as part of their promotional poster. It said the scariest. The person says it's the scariest movie of all time. I'm like, bro, that's a big claim to claim, especially when you got films out there like The Exorcist and The Shining and the original Halloween and so many great iconic horror movies. To say that this new movie coming out, I'm not saying that this new movie coming out won't be good or entertaining, but just like what me and Dave were talking about here, like what the Blair Witch Project did, the phenomenon behind it, the movie experience that we saw with individuals leaving the theater crying and upset. The Exorcist had that same impact, but then, doubled that. When you had people throwing up, because they were straight up scared out of their mind. When you had people passing out in theaters because they were scared out of their mind. That's why I will argue to the day I die that The Exorcist is the all-time scariest movie, because I don't think we'll ever see any type of film have that type of impact. Doesn't mean this new movie coming out isn't a good film. I just think the wording sometimes on their marketing needs to be better. For example, Blair Witch Project right here. All it says at the top, scary as hell. It's not claiming to be the best horror movie all time. It just says scary as hell. End of story.
Yeah, we can talk about that when we move over to the chat, but I agree with what you're saying. It's a marketing sort of it's a marketing ploy that a lot of people do and a lot of people use, and it's just one of those things that marketing companies like to use because it gets asses in the seats. And when it gets asses in the seats, it's something that can be effective for an audience, and that is something that whether Us is the scariest movie of all time or not, I really have no idea.
Now I got a Blair Witch question for you, because after rewatching the film again last night, the first film, Heather Donahue, can we put her in the category of Scream Queen? Not the Scream Queen, but a Scream Queen, with the amount of screaming that girl had to do in that film. And I mean, she has some, when you really watch it, she's got some pipes on her. I mean, she really does.
Yeah, I think you probably can. I think the reason why she's never really considered is because she's not running away from anything, and usually scream queens, they're considered more modern. They're named actors, so I think that's probably. But I mean, if you want to throw her into the mix, I don't see why not. I mean, what's the definition of a scream queen? It's a loose definition at best anyway, and so I don't see any reason why not. And I don't think she's gone on to do much in an acting career anyway, right?
No, she grows the marijuana out in California. She's got herself a nice little pot farm out there. So I follow her on Instagram as well too. Like I said, it's weird. I don't follow the big name celebrities. I follow people that, like, probably most people won't follow. Like, no one's going to follow Heather Donahue. I mean, and I don't say that to criticize and to be mean, but, she's not like in the Kim Kardashians and some of the other, people out there with millions of followers. But from following her on social media, she seems to be doing very well. And she still looks great. She's older than us by a few years, but I mean, like, she's not a MILF, so I can't call her a MILF. But that's a woman I wouldn't mind spending a little quality time with, for sure, because she looks great for her age. And yeah, she's got that pot farm out there in California. 420. Go you, Heather.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So in terms of, I really think they should just leave the Blair Witch Project alone. I really don't think there's any need to continue it. I don't think there's any need to, because Blair Witch 2016 had a lot of potential, but if that's what you were, I really don't see, like, there's no point in extending it past that. So what, now you're going to have the friend of the brother who was going after the sister going out to, like, there's really no point. I mean, maybe
there are two stories you could do in the Blair Witch mythology if you do it well. Okay. And people, are aware of it now. You could do one film directly, the Rustin Parr story, and how he butchers the little kids, which was a big part of the original film. You get a little bit more of the mythology of Rustin Parr in Book of Shadows. I think they hint at it a little bit. Yeah, of course they hint at it a little bit in Blair Witch, because it's the house they end up at the end of the film again. So you could do that if you execute it properly and not turn it into a shit show. You could also do a Coffin Rock story.
Yeah, I think, like, the thing is with found footage films, here's the thing. Found footage is, I know it's overused, it's a little cliche, a lot of people are desensitized to it now. A lot of people don't particularly like it, because the problem, as you touched on towards the beginning of the stream, and what we talked about here, is that a lot of found footage today tends to be overly produced.
Right.
And I think that when you look at the first Paranormal Activity, regardless of whether you like the movie or not, is not the fucking point. When you look at the very first Paranormal Activity, and even the second one as well, and you look at the Blair Witch Project, there's a sense of how they keep it real is they keep a lot of things subtle. They keep a lot of things subtle. They keep the sound design and everything that's happening is happening within the space of the environment. And less is more in this kind of a situation. When you start doing found footage movies that are, unless it's a found footage film where the narrative itself is going to become sensational, like a superhero movie, like Chronicle, where in the sense of that's something where, it lends itself, but even Chronicle doesn't become sensational until the very end of the movie. So there's that buildup, there's that payoff, there's that nurturing that was done through Chronicle. You're slowly but surely building to that, which gives you time to become emotionally attached to the characters. So by the time this one character is fucking flying around and punching shit, and you buy it. You believe it because of the way that the natural environment was nurtured. But when it comes to
Paranormal Activity, I thought did a good job with the found footage.
Yeah, they did. They did a really good job
using the ambient sound effects and whatnot. I thought Paranormal Activity did a phenomenal job. It's probably my second favorite next to Blair Witch as far as found footage goes. Because like we've said, with found footage films, Hollywood just they haven't executed it properly, because like with Blair Witch, the 2016 film, they went over the top with it rather than sticking to the found footage aspect. And someone in here a few moments ago said that no one ever talks about Jay Edwards said no one ever mentions the terrific acting in Blair Witch. Actually, Jay, me and Dave, the very beginning of the stream, you would have to go back to it. We did talk about Josh, Heather, and Mike's performances for being unknown actors at the time. Did a phenomenal job with this film and making us believe that they were, that this shit really went down.
Yes, absolutely. And because they were relatively inexperienced as well, and that sort of naive, nature about their character, and that green sort of unpolished performance actually helped the Blair Witch Project's shtick, because they came across, even though they were good, they came across as their conversations came across as organic. They were interrupting each other as natural conversations do, right? You were interrupting each other. You were speaking over each other. It felt very real and in the moment.
Exactly. Very organic.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's, when it comes to Blair Witch, I just don't see the need to continue the story, in my opinion, because I think There are other I would love to see I think found footage, as funny as this is going to sound, a lot of people probably think the found footage genre is overdone and overused. Actually, I think it's overprocessed and overproduced. And I think if you went back to the roots of found footage, the problem is it's a catch-22, because the era we live in motion pictures and the way horror is now, we are very much in a different era. The people that are coming up today, the young kids that are coming up, aren't necessarily into watching a found footage movie, which for the most part, for all intents and purposes, is very sort of slow moving, that slow burn. I mean, there were people that didn't like Hereditary, not necessarily because they didn't understand the psychological aspects of it towards the end of the movie and what it was all about and what the message was, although that may have been a factor. I have read some people say that they didn't like it because it was boring. Yep. And we live in a culture today where everything needs to be in your face. But the fact of the matter is that when you're watching a found footage movie, you're essentially, for all intents and purposes, again, watching a documentary. So you're watching this style that lends itself to that slow burn. So the creepy and the weird seep, it's insidious. The entire nature of a Blair Witch Project or a found footage movie should be insidious by nature. And of course, insidious is not just the name of James Wan's movie from 2011 or 10 or whatever it was. But it is actually, it's a word that means slowly, right? It's slowly moving. It's insidious. It creeps up on you without you knowing, essentially. So, found footage movies like Paranormal Activity, despite whether you like it or not, and I actually also quite like the sequel as well. I thought they went off the rails way after that.
Yeah,
but I actually
pretty solid. I agree.
Yeah, it was not bad. They went way off the rails by the time because then it becomes a teeny bopper horror movie. But the fact of the matter is that if you can utilize the found footage.
Time out. Okay, you got to ban Wes Carpenter, because when you're making comments like, "How about this? I'll fight Dave when I see him in person." Now you're talking about threatening somebody over YouTube. You're gone, bro. Dude,
what's going on here?
I don't know, but like he's revving up this chat room, and I've been monitoring what he's been saying. But now when you're talking about threatening someone, bro, come to Atlanta anytime, please. I will pay for your flight. Come to Atlanta, and we will settle this right at the airport. You won't even get out of the airport, okay?
Wes Carpenter is what? I haven't even been paying attention to the chat. What's going on here? There's two Wes, or are there two Wes Carpenters? Because they seem to be talking to each other. I've noticed that. I think there's two. Or maybe there's just one and he's talking to himself. Well, I don't know what's going on. So I must slap the holy shit right out of him. Is he talking about me?
Or me?
Oh God. All right. We'll just go to his channel here and we'll block little Wes. Little Wes. There you go, Wes. There we go. All right.
Back on track.
Yeah, I thank you for that. I wasn't paying attention to what was going on there. I don't. Yeah, I know that the only thing I know about
yeah, this is like what we're talking about, talking over each other organically, like they did.
There you go.
Example. What I was gonna say is, saying things immaturely is fine. When you start talking about threatening people, like that's a line that I don't even play with that shit. Either man up, step up to the plate, take a flight up to Toronto or come to Atlanta and back up your words or take a hike. That's
the only thing I know about this Wes Carpenter character is he was I like I said at the beginning, I think his name is Luke Russell, because I saw quite a few people that I think were trolling him and calling him out, saying that he's Luke Russell from, I don't know where the fuck he's from, but they were saying, so I'm assuming it's some guy named Luke Russell, and whoever that is, whatever that means to somebody, I have no idea, but I see him in the chat room a lot, but of course I'm so focused on what we're talking about, I have no idea what the fuck he's saying. But if you started, listen, Luke, if you're watching, if you want to contribute, if you want to talk back and forth, then do it. I mean, whatever you want to do, but I don't.
Well, anyways, we only got a few minutes before we take the chat questions. I think you and I can both agree that when it comes to the Blair Witch Project, that it's a good film to have in your rotation. every October. If you want, you go. For me, I watch all my scary movies pretty much in the month of October, and it's one that I go to. I don't have a set date, but it's definitely in that rotation every year for the last 20 years without a beat. I will always, pop this film in to my VCR. Although it's got a lot, even though the cover looks mint, the tape has got a lot of miles on it. So either I'll watch it digitally or I'll watch it on VHS. But I think we all would agree that the original film, it's a good film to watch. Like I said, once a year, pop it in there during Halloween season, and it's a fun film to watch. We mentioned this already with the performances of the actors. It's they did a great job. Very underrated, and don't get enough credit for what they were able to pull off in this film.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's it definitely is a classic film, but there's a number of reasons why it's a horror classic. And I think it's you cannot talk about the Blair Witch Project without talking about the marketing and how, because again, I'm not saying it's not a good movie for what it is, but certainly a big part of its success was the way it was marketed, something you just can't do nowadays. It would be very difficult to convince a lot of people, millions of people, that a movie being released theatrically, making millions of dollars, was in fact a real found footage movie. So unless it actually was a real found footage movie, which in case probably wouldn't actually legally be allowed to be released. So I agree with you. And I do believe that the found footage genre is not dead. I think it's just misguided. I think that it is overly produced and over sensationalized when it needs to get back to the roots and understand that found footage movies, unfortunately, it's a catch-22, like I said, because you have to make millions and millions of dollars, but no more than a few million at the very most, I think, should ever be used to make a found footage movie. Most of the money used to make a found footage movie, I think, should go to production, because I can make a found footage movie right now on my fucking cell phone.
Yep.
And then I might need $1 million to market the fucking movie,
which could be the next big thing. Someone might be on the pipe doing that. You never know.
You're absolutely right. So I mean, it's one of those things where we are oversaturated with it, but it's because when you see found footage movies, it starts off kind of like, oh, we're watching somebody's home movie, and they're like, hey guys, hey, how are you? John here. And you kind of feel real, but then there's that moment where it looks too polished. It looks too pristine. Mind you, cameras on phones are looking good now. You can shoot in full 1080, HD. And I get all that, but there's found footage movies by nature should be slow burns, and whatever it is that is going on, especially in the supernatural paranormal world, you really need to dangle that carrot and don't mix the sound where it feels overly produced. The sound has to match the environment you're in. And that was something that the first two Paranormal Activities did well, and the first Blair Witch Project did well, and something that the last Blair Witch just didn't do well. I mean, it was so, well, you remember when they're out in the woods and then you hear that, I forget what it was, like, or whatever. It's just so many, but it's just like, it doesn't sound like, I want to hear like a snap or something where you play up that woods at nighttime should have been a fucking character. Like when like in the first Blair Witch, when she gets out of the tent and I forget the guy's name, whatever she's yelling, Bob, come here. And the camera's running up and down. And you're going through it, but there's no music. There's no soundscape. It's just the crunching of the thing. And then you're stopping and you hear, Bob, and the camera has fallen. It's not framed correctly. It's fallen off of them, so you kind of see half of her face and she's like, it felt very organic, and naturally it would be that way if it was really happening. That's how found footage movies need to be.
Right. Well, like John Rogers says here, he likes the drones in Blair Witch 2016. I'm trying to figure out what could you have liked, because there was 2 scenes and all they did was send the drone straight up and then it came straight back down. I would have loved to have seen them utilize more drone footage, get some of those nice sweeping aerial shots, maybe some shots through the woods, hovering just over the trees and shit like that. Like, they didn't utilize it. They had the tool there. You saw it, but it was like, wait, this is it. We're going to get one shot of them as they're getting ready to leave. They send the drone up. You get one quick shot of that. And then when they're in the woods, you get one more. And you get this one, like I said, hovering shot. You see the Black Hills, and then they bring it back down, and that's it. Again, with technology today, the way YouTube is set up and vlogging and stuff like that, I would have tapped into that a little bit more, you know, and just gotten some more drone shots and some more aerial shots, you know, in the way that, you know, and it's not hard to fly a drone. I mean, and in fact, the type of drone that they were using, which looked like the DJI 3, I want to say, or possibly 4, like operating that with your phone. I mean, you can do it, but it's like, it's such a pain in the ass that you really should have been operating it with a remote control. But yeah, so everything you just said with regards to the found footage, I 100% agree with. You know, Paranormal 1 and 2 were great. The original Blair Witch was great. And I think those are the formulas that if you're smart, if you execute it properly, you can deliver a really good, very fun, entertaining found footage movie, which the Blair Witch Project is. It's a very fun, entertaining, you know, good movie to watch. And hopefully they do something this year. I haven't seen or read anything, but because it's 20th anniversary, I don't know if they're going to do a re-release in the theater or what they're planning to do, but nothing yet. I haven't seen anything online yet.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything either. So I'm not entirely sure. That's a good question. It'd be interesting to see if they do. Is it out on Blu-ray?
I don't know. I don't collect Blu-ray.
Yeah, I wonder if it is. I wonder if it ever was released on Blu. You see, but the thing is, though, you don't want to polish that shit up too much, because part of the charm of that movie is the 16 millimeter high 8 look, grainy look of it. I mean, that's part of the charm of it.
Yeah.
You know. Anyways, I guess we should move to the chat room for some questions.
Halloween questions, I'm sure.
Halloween questions. All right, let's go. Let's start asking questions, folks. Any questions you have, fire away. Fire away. You can ask us about the Blair Witch Project. You can ask us about whatever you want to ask us about.
David from Blurry Face. Dave and Tony, would you ever do an episode on Final Destination franchise? Also, how do you feel about it being rebooted, if you care or not? I only watched the first film, which didn't really sell it for me. So I was already checked out after that. So I didn't care about the sequels. What was the question? Dave or Tony, would you ever do an episode on the Final Destination franchise? Also, how do you feel about it being rebooted, if you care or not? And like I said, I saw the first one. I didn't like it. I was checked out on it. So I never watched any of the sequels.
Yeah, no, I don't particularly. I really enjoyed the first Final Destination. I thought that was, I might have seen the second one. I can't remember. I think that it's the Final Destination movies are, I don't think they need to be remade, do they? I mean, are the deaths in the all the films, are they outdated somehow? I mean, I don't think so. So I don't think it's necessary to reboot the Final Destination series, because what are you gonna do? You're just gonna do the same thing over again? Well, no. Now we're gonna. I just don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's a movie that, they're fun movies to watch, but I don't think it's a movie that necessarily needs a reboot, or a series that needs a reboot. No,
I agree. Falcon fan, Dave or Tony, or no, I'm sorry, hold on, one above you, it was about Blair Witch. Colin asked, what did you think about the ending of Blair Witch 2016? It was pretty much like the ending of the original. I mean, it's not, I mean, not really much difference, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, it was, like I said, it was the most exciting part of the movie, and it was cool, and it was well done, it was well shot, well produced. But at the end of the day, it was just like the ending of the first movie, but bigger and louder. And that doesn't mean there weren't certain original things that happened, like crawling through the tunnel, getting stuck, and things like that. But I just think that that was the highlight of the movie. Everything up to that point seemed to be much of the same. So the ending was a breath of fresh air when we got there. But I think if you had that same ending, but had a different sort of course throughout the movie, like I said, about focusing on the time shit and the time warp, and like, what the fuck is going on with time? And is this an alternate reality? Is that why nobody can find the house? The house actually exists out in the woods, but nobody can find it, because when you go out there, unbeknownst to you, when you go to sleep at night, you enter a different realm and a different reality. So it's like a parallel. Like, that would have been cool, but it was never explored. It was never touched on.
Well, like for example, when Lisa, I think was her name, was the actress's name, when she's up in the attic of the house and she's running around and you see her re-loop it, you know, like I thought that was kind of cool. That was something I picked up on last night that I didn't see originally when I first saw the movie. I was like, oh, okay, they're not talking about the time loop, but you're seeing it kind of happen as the movie's progressing, where she's in that attic space and she's re-looping and going basically back down the same hallway, but she's seeing different types of visuals, you know, whether it's the witch or Heather or whatever she's seeing. Again, like Dave, you just said, I wish they would have elaborated a little bit more on that.
Yeah, I wish they would have, because I think it would have been a very interesting sort of, it just would have been interesting. It would have been really interesting to see that play out, you know, and how, I don't know, but it would have been interesting. Super chat, Brandon Gregory. Thank you, Brandon. Says, how does the camera angle switch between you guys? Oh, that's a Google Hangout thing that it just, whenever I begin to talk, the camera is on me. And whenever Tony begins to talk, the camera is on him. So I'm not exactly sure how that works, but that would be built into Google Hangout software. Tommy Ricknell, thank you for the super chat. Oh, that's, I wonder how much that is in Canadian dollars. I'm not sure. Hi, Dave and Tony. Thank both of you for great content as always. Thank you very much, Tommy. A tip to Tony regarding Jason Part 6 mask. Check out Crash from Crash Creations. They're the best you can find. Cheers from Sweden. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, you'll have to check that out.
Definitely.
Let's see here. What else we got going on? Let's see. Michael Anderson says, Dave and Tony, has the 1980s nostalgia jumped the shark in shows and movies? Stranger Things did it well, but there's a lot of shit. Listen, it's going to run its course. We're in that phase right now.
Yep.
But I don't know if it's, look, jump the shark can be very subjective. There is such a thing as an objective jump the shark. But I mean, at the end of the day, there are some people that just love it and want more and more and more. But I do think there are certain tropes. Even the nostalgia trend is now finding its own sort of identity. So it's not just about revisiting old nostalgia stuff. Now, the nostalgia trend is becoming a nostalgia thing. So it's kind of like take the Stranger Things thing, for example, right? So that works well, and it was really successful because, as you've heard me say many times, that during the 1980s, that's what kids were doing at that time. But that trope of, you know, the bicycles and getting into shenanigans and all that kind of shit doesn't necessarily lend itself well to shit that's happening today. Because for the most part, kids are not out on their bikes riding around, and they're on their phones and they're on their screens. And it's not the same as it was 30 years ago. But you're seeing a lot of movies today, the new Child's Play film, Ghostbusters that's coming out, that I think are going to try and capitalize on, you know, those tropes. And the question is it going to translate into movies of today? So it's almost like the nostalgia is becoming a stereotype, you know? And so it's, I don't know if it's jumped the shark, but definitely they are milking it for all it's worth. And I'm not convinced that certain tropes and things of the nostalgia necessarily lend itself well to things of today. That would be my concern anyway.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I can't really add much more to what Dave said. You know, I agree on that. I mean, they're definitely milking the shit out of it, which, you know, which ultimately you can get 80s tired out, which, you know, to me, the 80s is such a precious era of movies and music. It's my favorite decade of movies and music that I don't want to see it get to that burnout stage. But it's Hollywood, and that's what they typically tend to do. But with question here regarding Us, the new movie that's coming out. Alex G said, "Hey guys, are you going to do a Us on our?" We got an acronym now. We're TDASB.
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 That's a mouthful. That's what she said.
Woo!
Yeah.
Are we gonna talk about Us?
We see it once we both have seen it. I'm sure we'll probably talk about it. I don't know if I'm gonna get a chance to see it this weekend because I know it comes out. I'm gonna certainly try to see it this week, but it may be something where I might not get a chance to see it this week, but it may be seeing it next week. What about you?
Yeah, you know what, I'm gonna try and see it in the movie theater. But it all, like, here's the thing, like it takes a lot. It's funny. It takes a lot to get me to go to the theater. And I don't mean a lot, but I don't rush out to see every movie that comes out. It's one of the reasons why I don't consider myself a movie reviewer, is because I don't want to set the expectation that every movie that comes out, I'm going to have something to say on. There's some people that say, Dave, what do you think of this? Dave, like, what do you think of that? I don't know. Probably the same as you. I have no idea. So will I see Us in the movie theater? I might. I don't know. I might catch it when it comes out, which might not be for a couple of more months. I might catch it in the theater, but I didn't catch Get Out in the movie theater. I waited till that was like well after the fact, but I might. I might because it's a hot movie that's out, and for the purposes of the show, and something I did not have this time last year, and so I might make an exception and say, well, this is something that probably Tony and I are going to want to see, or talk about on the show. So I'll make an exception and I'll rush out to see it. But it's not a movie under ordinary circumstances. It's not a movie that I feel compelled to go and see in the movie theater. I would be perfectly content on watching it at home, but because of the dynamics of the show and my channel and things like that, I might make an exception.
No, I'm the same way. I haven't even though I like watching the Marvel movies, I haven't even seen Captain Marvel yet. And
dude, I haven't seen Infinity War.
And that's not because I'm a 40-year-old or about to be a 40-year-old white dude, and according to Brie Larson, that this movie is not catered to me, or whatever stupid comment she said about 40-year-old white dudes. It's just I'm like Dave. I don't, unless it's something I absolutely really want to go see. Like, for example, I can tell you the movies that I'm surely going to go see when it comes out right away. Annabelle 3, just because I'm a big fan of the Conjuring series, and I'm a big fan of Vera and Patrick playing Ed and Lorraine Warren, and since it's going to be focused on them, I sure as shit going to go see it. I didn't see Annabelle Creation or Annabelle in theater. I watched it when it was out of theater, but Annabelle 3, that I can guarantee you I will see in theater. Lion King, I'm for sure going to go see that in theater. And there's I'll see It Chapter 2 in theater. And there's a couple of other movies, but like Dave said, I'm the same. My schedule, like scheduling is a big factor between what I'm doing with my commercial photography and my clients and stuff like that. I'm always doing something every single day regarding that. I don't really get too many times off. So to be able to just sit down for a couple hours, like this is me sitting down for a couple hours with my spare time, is sitting here doing this show with Dave.
Yeah, exactly. Two things. Roger Dodger says, guess my super chat didn't work. Did you try to send a super chat and it didn't go through, or did you send one and we didn't answer it? Something you have to remember, folks, is that just because you send a super chat doesn't necessarily mean we're going to see it, especially if you send it early on in the feed. I say this on many occasions: never start sending super chats until we actually go to the Q&A part of the show, which is usually the last half hour of the show, or sometimes we go, a bit over. If you did send it and it did work, but we just didn't answer it, well, then ask the question again. Don't bother sending it again, but ask it again and we'll answer it. But try never to send your super chats at the beginning of the show, because we're not taking questions and we don't want to stop the flow of what we're talking about to answer a question until we get to the Q&A part of the show. So feel free to ask it, because I didn't see it. You might want to double check that. And also too, Skate Tune says, wait, you ain't seen Infinity War? No, I don't know. Maybe I have some new subscribers here, but I'm not a big superhero guy. That doesn't mean I don't like superhero movies, but I'm not caught up in all that shit. I don't know the first fucking thing about who's in what's going on, what the dynamic is. That doesn't mean that and usually people's next thing will be, yeah, but Dave, I think you'd really like it. It has nothing to do with whether I would really like it or not. I just haven't gotten around to watching it. I didn't grow up with it. I didn't grow up with the same emotional attachments as a lot of people did to the superhero genre. Like, I like your staples, like your Superman and your Batman and your Spider-Man. But when you start getting into I just don't know. And I'll watch it. I like the two Deadpool films, but that's primarily because of Ryan Reynolds. I think he's fucking hilarious, and anything he's in, I'll be more than happy to watch. And I thought they were really good movies. But no, I haven't seen Infinity War. And when Endgame comes out, I probably won't see that either. I won't rush. I'm one of those people that will not rush out to see it I'll catch it eventually, like I did Deadpool. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll watch that. But of course, I haven't seen so many of the 21 films. Like I maybe have out of the 21 Marvel films, ending with Endgame. Honest to goodness, now I've seen maybe 3. I saw the first 2 Iron Men. I've seen. I might have seen Captain America, but that's it. Like I really have not. I'm not up on it. And I know people are like, what? You're not up on it? But everybody, no, not everybody is. And I'm one of those people, unfortunately.
No, I agree. I'm with you.
Grave Warmer says, do either of you have most anticipated movies of 2019? If so, why? Well, we actually had a Two Dudes and Some Bullshit episode. Good. If you go back at the beginning of the year, 4 or 5 shows back or 6 shows back, we actually talk about our most anticipated movies of 2019. So feel free to check that out. Dr. Splinter, super chat. Thank you, Dr. Splinter. Appreciate that. Dr. Splinter, I like that.
Michael Anderson quickly asked me how I got into the photography field. I don't know if you can see this, but that's a picture of me at the age of 3 years old back in 1983, taking pictures with film cameras. I've been doing photography my entire life, and just naturally progressed after high school into, I started doing event stuff for radio stations here in Atlanta, working for a radio station, taking event photographs and things like that. And that kind of transitioned into doing corporate photography, real estate photography, and all just different types of things. So it just kind of, everything has evolved organically and naturally for me. I never really forced it into like, I have to do one specific thing. I think Dave could agree with this in the voiceover acting thing. Like, I don't think Dave ever really narrowed it into one. I'm going to do this specific thing for voiceover and nothing else. I kind of keep it like, even if you follow me on Instagram, I mean, one day I'm posting landscape photos. Next day I'm posting pictures of half naked women. No joke, seriously. Cityscape. Like, I never really stuck to just one specific style of photography. It's just, whenever I find something that looks interesting to photograph, I photograph it and I share it. That's always been my like philosophy. I know like that's not the Instagram thing to do. I know the Instagram thing to do is like, oh, you got to have one theme, one color tone. I'm like, fuck that. I'd be bored after 2 weeks of doing that shit. I like mixing it up and changing it up. And I like catering to the horror audience and finding something out there in the landscapes when I'm photographing something that might remind us from a scene from a movie, because I feel that it makes it more of an engaging conversation to talk about when I do post something and share with you guys, versus to just doing the like traditional like post and every, photographer's following you like, oh my God, great photo. What f-stop did you do? What camera did you do? What lens did you do? Like, no, I like my horror community and niche, but what about you, Dave, with voiceover? Same thing?
Yeah, well, no, it is. I mean, look, the voiceover industry is huge, and there's a lot. People don't realize that the voiceover industry is one of the most important parts of the entertainment and corporate side of industries as well, but one of the most unappreciated and unrecognized, because you are out of sight, out of mind for the most part. Listen, I've been in the studio doing a movie trailer for Get Out. I did a movie trailer for It. And then the next day I'm doing corporate narration for e-learning for the Bank of Canada. I mean, it's such a contrast, which isn't very exciting. It's like, well, that's not very exciting, but I'll be in the studio doing a movie trailer the day before. I do everything from movie and game trailers to network promos. I'm the voice of 2 networks and to radio and TV commercials. I've done a couple of Super Bowl ads and I mean, everything. But all the way down the line to the boring stuff, to training, e-learning and things like that.
Oh yeah. But you know what? See, here's the thing, and I say this about when you call it boring stuff, like I do real estate photography stuff. It's not exciting, but something, one of the things that with real estate photography, it helps me a lot with, how can I manipulate leading lines? How can I, so that when I'm out doing my own shit, I take what I'm learning from the boring stuff that's not exciting, but still is putting food on the table and paying my bills, and figuring out ways to continue to craft and hone my skills. And I'm sure the same thing, exact same thing for you when you're doing those like real, like, oh, this is not a fun spot to do, but it's paying and whatnot. I'm sure you're figuring out new techniques and new ways of how you're enunciating things, how what type of range you're going to get from your vocals on this. And I just learned from, because of what here happened recently with Luke Perry and the passing of him, that Jason Priestley, your fellow Canadian, his daughter is an award-winning voiceover artist. I had no fucking clue.
I did not know that. I'll have to look her up. I was unaware of that.
So
maybe I've met her. I didn't even realize it.
Canadian.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. No, we Canadians, we're a talented folk.
Guys are taking the world secretly.
That's right. That slowly but surely. Nobody expects Canada.
That's what it is.
Let me see here. I just wanted to, because Roger Dodger did, he said, hope all is well, guys. And I said, nerd bit, please. Nerd bit. I'm not sure what you mean by nerd bit. You mean my nerd voice? Hey, man. That one? I'm not sure if that's what you mean, but there it is in case you wanted it.
Or do we nerd out on?
Maybe that's what it is. I agree with what you're saying, and look, the when you're doing a network promo or a movie trailer or whatever it is, obviously that's the most fun that I have, or even animation. If I get to do a kids TV show or whatever, it's so much fun to do, and that's where you really sort of that's the best stuff. That's where the best paying is, and all that, of course, but. The corporate stuff is there's so much of it. That's what it is, that you can't just focus on trailer and commercial and promo, although that's great stuff and it's hard to break into. And when you get into it, then it's I mean, that's what my 3 Voice Arts Awards nominations are for. We're for network promos, but there's so much of corporate work, and I don't necessarily seek it out. People will come to me because they like my voice and they say, we're doing this training video. Can you do that? And of course I have a professional home studio, so I can do it from home, and that's what happens. But yeah, it's all voiceover is not just cartoons, and it's not just movie trailers. It's a wide range of things. It's IVRs, which stands for interactive voice response. So when you call, your cell phone, hello and welcome to Virgin Mobile, and all that kind of shit. It's all you hear. It's all over the place. It's huge. It's absolutely huge.
Grave Warner said, "Hey Tony, did I miss the beginning of the broadcast? Did you show off the News Myers mask?" First of all, Chris Barber, who's the guy who got me. Baber, sorry, he's the one who sent me this mask. First of all, thank you very much. Very humbling. I am definitely going to execute this mask to the fullest. We pretty much got the whole Myers outfit together because I'm going to start doing original portraits. I just, believe it or not, the hardest thing that I was telling this to Dave before the stream tonight, the hardest thing was getting the jumpsuit right. And I was going through and testing out different jumpsuits on myself and seeing how it was going to reflect with my style of photo editing, whether it's doing black and white or doing color. And I was literally one of the most frustrating processes. I went through navies, grays, blacks, you name it. Until finally I was set on this really dark green, almost close to blackish type color, because when I convert a photo into black and white, if I'm wearing all black, like I'm wearing the t-shirt right now and my jacket all black, you lose the entire shape of your body, especially if I'm doing a real black scene and I'm just like half light in the mask, which is what I was testing out this week once the mask arrived. So then I'm like, okay, well, that's not working. Let me try navy. Navy wasn't working, especially when I was doing color and daylight stuff, out in my backyard, just because I'm going to try to recreate some scenes from the original film. Like there's a house that I'm going to shoot at looking out a window down, and a person's actually got an old school laundry thing hanging outside. So we're going to hang sheets out there, and I'm going to try to recreate what Carpenter and Cundy did in the 78 film and try to create it with my own, still image and whatnot. But the fucking jumpsuits just looked like shit. So I came finally after my 8th time going back to Walmart and finally settling on this and testing it out. So we finally got it together. Chris, man, dude, this mask is totally awesome. This is totally going to help me out with my Michael Myers film photography project that I'm going to be taking and showing off on Instagram. And Dave can attest for it because he knows what I'm talking about when you're talking about post-production, just how it's just so important on you getting the right color tone for that jumpsuit. Otherwise, your picture is going to look wonky.
I totally agree. 100%. I am really looking forward to your still photographs. If you guys are not following Tony Michael on Instagram, the link is in the description. Make sure you are doing that because that's where he will post those photos. So if you want to see those photos, you got to be following Tony on Instagram. Now, those photos are not posted yet, and they're not coming like tomorrow, but in the next, few weeks or so, those photos will be posted. So if you want to see them, you got to follow Tony on Instagram. So you might as well get to that. I don't know what the fuck you're waiting for. Let me see here. Let's see. Blood of the Martyr, 1987. Hey, Dave, is it true that you compare yourself to Robert De Niro? Yes. Every morning I wake up and I look at myself in the mirror and I think to myself, I am just as sexy as Robert De Niro. I am unbelievably sexy. Robert De Niro is one sexy motherfucker. And I look at myself and I go, but then I think to myself, am I Cape Fear sexy? Am I Midnight Run sexy? Am I Taxi Driver sexy? And then I realize, no, maybe I'm Raging Bull sexy. But whatever the sexy is, it's just sexy. There you go. Let's see here.
I'm a little bit more humble. I don't really go through Robert De Niro approach. I look at myself in the mirror, kind of look at the beard and go, no, I'm not quite Duck Dynasty, but I'm getting there.
You know what? And there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody needs a little duck. Everybody needs a little dynasty. I feel like George W. Bush. Everybody needs a duck. Everybody needs a little dynasty.
Have you seen Duck Dynasty, the TV show?
Oh, of course I have. Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't like watch it, but I mean, I know what you're talking about. I can't come out tonight, guys. I got to go home and watch me some Duck Dynasty. Let's see.
Hey, that's a good question. Skate Tune, Dave, Tony, how did you guys meet? YouTube.
Yeah. That's a great question.
Did you find me because I was doing the Halloween videos, or did I find you because it was like how it happened? I don't know. And then I think we started mentioning each other in our own streams or our own videos, and then it just we started to email and like we should just do this shit together.
Yeah, I think it was. I was familiar back in 2017 when I was doing a lot of, or I had begun to put my face out there more, and I started to actually talk about Halloween. You were one of the only other channels that was talking about. It's not that Drum Dums wasn't talking about it or Cody Leach wasn't talking about it. Certainly We Watched a Movie was talking about it, but you were one of the only guys that was it was really almost all of your content.
Pretty much.
And the way you were just a voice, where the others were, of course, you could see them on camera. So that stood out to me. And I stumbled across a few of your videos. I forget which ones they were, but I mean, I did. And obviously I think it was our viewers, because there's a lot of crossover. I mean, a lot of people a lot of people that watch me also watch Cody and watch Lee and watch the guys from Wham, and then people that watch them watch me. So there's a lot of crossover and overlap, and I think it sort of maybe translated into the comment section where people were like, hey, you and Dave should do something, like very much like right now what people want myself and Cody Leach to do. There's been like this campaign to get Cody and I to rant and rave about something that pisses us off or something to that effect. And Cody and I have exchanged a couple of messages back and forth where, we're thinking about doing that. But that was the fans that did that. It wasn't that Cody and I mean, we're aware of each other and we like each other. We don't not, like each other. And of course we're subscribed to each other, but it wasn't a thought, I guess, that crossed our minds, because he's doing his thing, I'm doing my thing, you were doing your thing, I was doing my thing. And it was a lot of the fans kind of think, hey, I'd love to see these guys kind of come together. And that's sort of how it came to be. And who messaged who first? I can't fucking, I have no idea.
I think it was me, because I almost know it was me, because I had reached a point where I was checked out, like mentally, doing videos on YouTube. I had taken a break, came back again, had some success again with it, with the Cobra Kai videos and some of the Halloween stuff. But I just, because of my schedule and workload, and I couldn't see myself committing to doing this on a daily basis and spending that amount of time editing and whatnot. My photography was my business and my photography was taking a serious hit. And that's like, no, that's not going to happen. So I still wanted to be a part of the platform and do this, but I wanted to eliminate the headache of being responsible that I have to post content every day. I have to talk about this. I have to do this. I'm like, no, fuck no. I don't have to do whatever the fuck you guys are telling me to do. That's not going to happen. So that's when I approached Dave and I said, why? I think we did it on my channel first just to see how it would go. I think we did the trailer to Halloween. I think that's what we did first.
Yeah, I think it was the very first trailer we did a live stream.
A live stream on that. So that kind of was the foundation of this, and I liked it. I enjoyed it, and I think that's when I pitched the idea to you. And I said, you know, dude, we could do this like a once a week type thing where we're just basically shooting the shit, talking about whatever we feel like talking about. I know you guys, especially you guys who message me, and my apologies because I get a lot of DMs from you guys on Instagram, and I can't respond to all as much as I would love to because I get a lot of them. You're almost better to leave a comment on my photo because your chances are you're going to get a response faster there than you are going to get in the actual DM part of it. I know you guys want us to talk about Halloween all the time, but I think when me and Dave were talking about this, we knew Halloween was always going to be that undertone to this because me and Dave, we love this franchise and we love to talk about Halloween, but we also thought like, hey, why don't we just like kind of talk about our favorite movies, not like Dave was talking about here a few moments ago, not becoming movie reviewers, not having to commit ourselves to go watch films every single week and this, that, and another. And I kind of like the formula that me and Dave have come up with. We kind of shoot ideas at each other during the week. Last week it was kind of, me like, hey, Blair Witch is 20 years. Why don't we just talk about Blair Witch? It may not be our most popular show because it's not talking about Halloween, but I think it's something that me and Dave thoroughly enjoy.
Yes, I absolutely agree. It's because I want to talk about everything. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I sorry, I lost you here. Where are you? Oh, there you are. It's one of the reasons why I don't do traditional movie reviews on the channel because I want to be in control of the content that I put out there. Right. I don't want to set any unnecessary expectations. And with this show, I don't mind talking about Halloween. You got a Halloween question? Ask away. But of course, there's a lot of things I want to talk about. There's a lot of different movies I want to talk about. Tony and I also want to do a show where we talk about Indiana Jones as well, because I'm a huge fan of the Indiana Jones franchise. And we know that that's probably not going to appeal to a lot of people because the vast majority of people who have discovered me through YouTube are hardcore horror and Halloween fans who may or may not really care about Indiana Jones, but I do. So I'm going to talk about it. And that's what I like about our relationship and our friendship here, because I had never, I can't say I never saw the Indiana Jones. I knew who Indiana Jones was back in the 80s. I caught glimpses of it, but I had never watched it in its entirety ever. And I mentioned it to Dave. I said, listen, dude, Netflix just dropped all 4 films. I'll watch these, I'll, take notes and whatever, and let's do a stream together. Vice versa, you guys keep asking about Cobra Kai. Dave is going to watch the series. And once Dave gets caught up to that, we're going to do a show because we know how popular Cobra Kai is right now. Of course, we're going to do stuff, especially as it gets closer to the release of that. And that's the type of friendship that I like that me and Dave have established, that I can jump into something that he's hot about when it comes to like Indiana Jones and be there for him and do a show dedicated to that. And vice versa, he can do one in return when it comes to Karate Kid and the Cobra Kai. Exactly, because my goal is actually to watch the Karate Kid movies and then move on to Cobra Kai. Yep. Now, I've seen the Karate Kid movies. Obviously, you couldn't be a kid in the 80s and not see them. But I haven't seen them probably since the 80s. Sure. So I got to go back and I got to watch them so I have the base perspective. So Cobra Kai then makes sense to me, because then I can watch Cobra Kai and I can have the perspective of, them meeting up again and shit going down, because I need that perspective from the past. So I can't just watch Cobra Kai. I got to watch at least the first 2 films. So I can get that perspective, and I plan on doing that. So yeah, no, it's a good thing. It's 9:04. Let's go a little bit longer. Why the hell not? Yeah. Let's see here.
The Film Addict, actually, because I want to hear your story, because you got a great story on this. The Film Addict, also a great follower of mine and a huge supporter on my Instagram, gave me a nice shout out this week or last week. It was during the break between us, and I haven't had a chance to thank you. Thank you for that, by the way. He said, thoughts on Ghost Adventures TV show. Also, have you guys ever had anything paranormal happen? I'm going to say this about the show. and I'll let Dave talk about his experience in the show, and then I'll share mine.
Oh, geez. Well, I don't want to go.
That's why I like yours experience better. Mine's kind of lame.
Yeah, I don't want to go too into detail. But I have mentioned this before, that I am currently and have been for nearly 20 years, in development on a major motion picture, and it's a film that deals in the supernatural and the paranormal. I've written a feature-length major motion picture script that has been the last 15 years or so. It's been in what would, if it was in Hollywood, it would be in development hell. But I've been constantly polishing it and tweaking it because it's not a horror movie per se. It's a mystery thriller drama, and it's based on a true story of my second year of college. And I had a paranormal experience in college over the course of a few months. It sounds very cliche, but it's very true. There was an abandoned farmhouse down the road from where I went to college, and it sat about a football field away from the main road. So it was hidden behind some brush, and the story was that kids used to party there because it was the perfect place to party and not be seen, because you're away from the road and it's abandoned, yada yada yada. But the legend is that things got a little too weird, so kids stopped partying there, and we would go over there at all hours of the morning, and weird and unusual things did happen. Now, I don't mean Amityville horror shit. I don't mean like the floorboards moving and the walls bleeding, and I'm not talking about overly sensational Hollywood garbage, but people did see unusual things and experience unusual things. And I don't want to go too into detail because I do want to make this movie and I want everybody to sort of experience it that way. But the experience lasted, because we would go over to the house and we would investigate the house, we would document the house. And I am very familiar with EVP, electronic voice phenomenon, and very familiar with photographs and taking photos. It's just, it's unbeknownst to a lot of people who may not think that I actually am into that kind of thing. I am, but I'm into it from a perspective of, I'm not caught up in the ghost hunting aspect of it. Ghost hunting, if you will, and that wasn't a thing back in 2000 or 1999 when I was going through this.
Very taboo.
Very taboo. It became a thing after that. We never saw ourselves as ghost hunters. We didn't call ourselves that. We didn't have t-shirts and hats made and call ourselves the Niagara Falls paranormal investigator. It wasn't anything. We were just a bunch of kids in college who happened to, but the experience was something that was,
when you say that, you just brought me back to that time. It was so much fun doing that shit.
Well, it was
commercialization, none of this shit that you're seeing. It was just, like I said, you were a small community of people that were just into this shit, that were just kind of curious about what the fuck's out there. And
and the thing that I've learned, though, like this investigation to this house lasted for months. I mean, till the end of the college year, which would have been April or May. So, what ended up, like, you get to a point where it's not about, the creepy doors or the shadows or the balls of light that you see, or that, whatever it is. All that stuff is great, and that's stuff that's fantastic. But I became very fascinated and interested into really discovering and learning more about consciousness and where the seat of consciousness lies, and about death and the death process. And is consciousness separate from the brain? Is mind, separate from the brain? And where does consciousness, like all that kind of stuff, because that's the stuff, if you can figure that out through scientifically, because that's all we know right now are the means of science. If you really can figure that out, that then you can really start to decipher, is there something that survives the death process? Yeah. these ghost shows are entertaining and they're fun. Don't get me wrong, but they never solve anything at the end of the day. You're no further along at the end of the episode than you were at the beginning of the episode, other than you might go, oh, I guess there is something weird going on in that house. Well, of course there's something weird going on in the house. That's why you're investigating it. You know what I'm saying? And now you have some EVP and a couple of weird things. Oh, I think it sounds like cow. And that's the vast majority of what these shows are, and they're fun to watch. And
you hear that sound created by the dude offside, on the side of us,
right?
Like, oh my God.
And they're overly sensationalized and they're fun. And part of that EVP was part of my experience. I have some EVP locked loaded on cassette tapes that would blow you away. I mean, like, I'm not talking about. No, I'm not talking about shit that just sound. I'm talking about. Anyways, it's a whole other show. We should do maybe a show on it. But the point I'm making is that my movie that I'm working on is about that. Is about the seat of consciousness and where does, and wrapped, of course, in this mystery thriller drama that is going to be sort of that spooky, creepy movie to watch. And and it's a big thing. It's if I only ever do one major feature in my life, that would be the one that I would like to do. And funny enough, I because I work in the industry and I've fortunate enough to know certain people, there's certain people that I know who I will leave nameless, but have expressed interest in potentially helping to produce that. I know people
how that always goes, right? One minute they're like, yeah, next minute they checked out.
Right. It happens. I know people who've worked with A24. I know people who've worked, so I mean, it certainly it helps. But at the end of the day, if you don't have a script, if you don't have a vision and an idea, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
And it all starts with a story. It all starts with a script. So hopefully if I'm able to actually, just one major, I mean, of course I've done little shorts, but I mean a major feature in my life that you could potentially go to the theater and see, or watch on Netflix, or buy on Blu-ray, or, whatever the case is, this would be it, because it's a personal project and it asks a much larger question. It's not just about ghosts. It's not just about, it's about, is there something more, and I'm not approaching it from a religious perspective. I'm approaching it purely objectively.
Yeah. For example, something more recent here. And Dave has seen this house, and the house is featured on my Instagram. There's a farmhouse, old plantation house. It's abandoned here in Georgia. Now, I didn't experience anything inside the house, but it sits on a 200-acre property, and there are old shacks that are from the early 1800s that, without getting into details, that these are slave quarters. So when I'm there, you just get this sense of like, bad shit happened here. It's more of like, it's not like what Dave said here. It's not like I'm experiencing like floorboards are shaking and I'm seeing like crazy shit going down. No, it's like when you're, like I said, not in the house, but actually inside of these shacks, or what would be considered slave quarters. Inside of them, you just knew like bad shit happened here a long time ago, and you can still feel that presence of just dread and just what we've all read in the books. I don't like talking about it because, slavery is just not something, it's not a subject that I'm comfortable talking about, because nobody should ever be enslaved. And you just know, unfortunately, that there was a time in our culture, in our history, that this was a thing that was going down and bad shit happened. So it's more like that type of vibe than versus the, like, what you see in typical movies and what Dave was talking about. Yeah. Yeah. And that's understandable. And that's, that kind of an experience is what a lot of people, experience it, right? It's hard to explain, it's something you actually do have to experience. Exactly. Yeah. Zach Gaxiola says, Dave and Tony, what are your particular thoughts? Sorry? Zach Morris? Zach. All right. Say by the bell. Hello. He says, Dave and Tony, what are your particular thoughts on Disney's live action remakes of Beauty and the Beast, The Jungle Book, and the newest trailer for the upcoming Aladdin? Well, first of all, didn't watch it, haven't seen the trailer, only curious about Lion King. That's it. Okay, well, I will tell you that I have seen Beauty and the Beast, and I have seen The Lion King. The Jungle Book. My apologies. And I have seen Mowgli. That's the Netflix one. That's the one I saw.
Okay, there's Mowgli. Well, there's the Disney Jungle Book as well. First of all, I really enjoyed Cinderella. I thought Beauty and the Beast was okay. Thought it was all right. I really enjoyed the Jungle Book, Disney's The Jungle Book, not Mowgli. I haven't seen that one yet, although I'm sure it's fine. But I mean, it's just that it's unbelievable. The hyper realism that you see in the Lion King trailer is what you get in Disney's The Jungle Book. Okay. So I mean, it's just the whole movie is just fucking phenomenal. I mean, that entire movie is that hyper realistic animation. So I mean, it was fantastic. Look, I think, and I'll get to Aladdin in a second. This is as many people are saying, oh, it's fine. I hate that they're making these, class. I'm not surprised because it just seems like a natural progression. They have the technology to do it. They're not going to remake it again, in a literal drawing form animation that's been done. So now they want to bring it to a new generation and use modern technology to do it. And if it's done well, and if it's really good, then I don't see an issue with it. I mean, it doesn't disturb the original. The originals are still fantastic. The Aladdin trailer, I look, it all sets it all comes down to what that genie is going to be like. People say no one can play the genie other than Robin Williams. Well, that's not entirely true. I don't know if I would have cast Will Smith as the genie. Some people say, what about Jack Black? He would have been. I actually kind of think, he would have been a great genie. I think Jack Black probably, and I can't judge because I haven't seen the movie.
Here's the thing, and I don't know if you agree with me on this with regards to Will Smith as the genie. For the brief that I have seen of Will Smith as a genie, I still can't separate that I'm watching Will Smith and I'm not watching the genie. When you watch the animated, even though it is animation, I don't feel like I'm listening to Robin Williams. I feel like I'm listening to a character that Robin Williams has created.
Sure. And part of the reason for that is because you're actually watching an animated film. Yep. So there's that, and Robin Williams was a brilliant actor in terms of voices, and he was a brilliant, not only voice actor, but actor. So, I mean, he became that character. Whereas when you watch Will Smith, well, yeah, you actually see Will Smith. So there's that disconnect of, and because you're used to what you saw, and is this really is this Will Smith or is this the genie? It's hard to know until we actually see the movie. I think Jack Black would have been a great choice to play that role. He certainly could have done it. Yeah. But when it comes to Aladdin, I mean, I think the more concern for me with Aladdin is not really Will Smith. I think the second trailer, the trailer that they just released a couple of days ago, I think is better. I think Will Smith looks better as the genie in that movie. So that gives me a little more hope that the overall film is going to be better than what we were seeing in the trailers prior. However, I think Jafar is still, I agree with those who say he doesn't feel intimidating. He doesn't feel ominous. He feels like he doesn't have that sound of the villain that you want. Now, that doesn't mean that he's not going to transcend that. And by the end of the movie, we're like, oh, actually, it was okay. But I agree, in the trailers, I wanted a more ominous sounding Jafar. But having said that, your question was, what do you think of the remakes in general? I think it was bound to happen. Because it's reintroducing to a new generation, and they're not going to reintroduce it in the same way. They have the technology to do this hyper realism now in terms of animation, and why wouldn't you take advantage of it? And I understand why they're doing it. And if they're good, if they're actually good, I don't think there's anybody here that can say that the Jungle Book wasn't at the very least pretty fucking impressive. Winning solves everything, right?
There you go. Mike Johnson here asked, I think one of the scariest horror movies I've ever seen is Black Christmas. What are your thoughts, Dave and Tony, on Black Christmas? Now, I have to clarify this because this has also been some confusion here. We had a movie called Silent Night, which I think is your version of Black Christmas, right? Silent Night, Deadly Night. So I have to make sure we're not talking about two different films here, and that we are talking about the same film, because there was a movie that was released in Canada that was called Black Christmas, but it was released here in the States as, I believe, it was Silent Night, Deadly Night.
The movie. Yeah, the movie was released in the US as Silent Night, Evil Night.
Evil Night. Sorry, thank you. Evil Night. Yes.
Yeah, there actually is a movie called Silent Night, Deadly Night, I think, which is a completely separate horror movie. Now, since that initial release in the United States under Silent Night, Evil Night, the reason why it was released under Silent Night, Evil Night is because I believe the distributors in the US were worried that having a movie called Black Christmas, the title in and of itself. Now, remember, this is 1974. So there's no social media, there's no internet. The title of the movie itself might rub people.
Talking about the one with Lois Lane. Jesus.
Yes,
I'm drawing a blank on her name.
Margot Kidder.
Thank you.
Yes, and they were worried that releasing that movie under that title might rub some people the wrong way and confuse some people, because of being called Black Christmas. So it was released under the title Silent Night, Evil Night. Now, having said that, after its initial release, if you went to the store to buy that movie today in the US, you would buy it under the title Black Christmas, because that's what it is universally known as now. It was only known as Silent Night, Evil Night in the US for a very short period of time. I believe if it was to air on TV in the States, if you were to buy it in the States, if it was to wind up on Netflix in the States, it would be under Black Christmas. That's because there was a remake in 2006 with Carrie Fisher called Black Christmas. So, that's what it's known as now. It's a Canadian film. It was shot here in Toronto.
And it's a good horror movie.
It's a great horror movie. And it was one of the first of its kind to utilize the point of view and the POV, and keeping, of course, the antagonist at bay. I think it's a great movie. It's one of my favorite horror movies of all time. And it is the epitome, along with Halloween and Psycho, of course, but it is one of those horror movies that is a poster child for that slow burn, that less is more, that creep factor. And of course, it also stars John Saxon, which of course played Nancy's father, and he's a cop in that movie as well. And some people are like, maybe he's the same cop. Are they connected somehow? Is the dude in Black Christmas Robert Englund before he was burned alive? Oh, the rumors! I just started it.
You did. But this was one that was a few comments up. I wanted to make sure it was mentioned in here because I think we're going to do a special on this one night here in the future. Bud's aunt, George Romero, is the reason why I love movies, let alone horror. His story and latent image became a fascination. I couldn't agree more. I think are we going to do a dedicated George Romero night? Or are we going to, like we are going to do with Kubrick? How do we want to, without doing too deep of a conversation now about it? Because Romero definitely is up there, with Kubrick as far as, horror and their stylization of how they delivered a horror movie.
Kubrick night is one of those things. It'll probably be easier to do a Romero than it would a Kubrick, because Kubrick's films are not only long, some of them, they are very layered. And there's a lot of subliminal messaging and deep meaning. You can do a 4-hour podcast on just The Shining. There's Orange, or A Clockwork Orange, or 2001, or Barry Lyndon, or Alita, or pick your poison.
You would almost have to do, like for Kubrick, we'd almost have to do a movie by movie versus do a Kubrick night. Unless you wanted to sort of just, kind of do a basic sort of over sort of, over, what am I trying to say? Sort of what the fuck's the word I can't remember. I can't think of the word I'm trying to say, but a general sort of look at his movies, we could totally do that. But yeah, if we wanted to dive deep into Kubrick, then it might have to be like, Kubrick month, where it's, movie by movie.
Yeah, exactly. George A. Romero be fun to do. Obviously, we could do, because obviously he's known for his, zombie films, and that would always be fun to do. I haven't watched those movies in quite some time, so that would always be fun to revisit for sure.
Here,
okay, we'll go to 9:30. Let's go to 9:30. And again, folks, if we don't answer your question, as you guys know, I always say this, it's nothing personal. Tony and I like to be thorough with our answers. I think you guys would appreciate that, of course. And there's so many going by that sometimes it's hard to keep up. So it's never personal. Let's see. Bub's aunt or aunt. Bub's aunt. Okay, keep talking. Final word. You can't make a psycho understand because they don't understand they're psycho. I understand you, psycho. Goodbye.
I think he's talking to someone else in the chat room and not us.
I think so. I think so. Okay. Zach Frederick says, have you guys heard of the Mandela effect? Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. The Mandela effect, in all seriousness, I think I don't think there's anything to it. I think it's just people, let's face it, eyewitness reports are what, Tony?
Fake news. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
They could be, but as the old saying goes, eyewitness reports are usually the most unreliable reports because we tend to see things that, we see what we want to see. We don't see things clearly. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't take it into consideration, but eyewitness reports, of course, they're very hard to sort of, and the Mandela effect, it's like, I could have sworn that it was Berenstain Bears. Well, no, it was always Berenstain Bears.
I can't do it, but Dave's going to do a better one. No, Dave, fake news.
Oh, Donald. No, it's not, Dave. I'm telling you, it was fantastic. It was great. It was amazing.
I can't do
it. It was amazing. Look, I'm telling you right now, it was Berenstain, okay? It was Berenstain. Melania, I'm going to have another kid, and I'm going to love this kid, and it's going to be the best kid. I'm going to love him, okay? It's just the way it is, all right?
Yeah, see, I can't do impersonation, so that was my poor attempt at Trump. But
It's not like I do a great Trump. You just have to understand sort of the cadence, and he's always like this, and he's doing this, and it's wonderful, and it's great, and I'm the best, and it's amazing, and it's just the way it is, okay? I'm going to shut up, sit down, get him out. Oh, Donald Trump. What the hell were we talking about? Oh, the Mandela effect. Yes, I have heard of the Mandela effect, but I think it's more just not remembering things correctly.
Pretty much. Dave and Tony, Christopher Wayne, is there any story about Creed 3? I mean, I think Jordan is contracted to do a Creed 3, but I don't think Stallone's going to be a part of it. I think Stallone has officially hung up the Rocky.
Why? Why do a Creed 3? Listen, look, there's nothing more to tell.
No, there really isn't.
And there are people that say, well, yeah, but he could fight, Teens
kid.
Yes, it's like, why? Yeah. Why would he fight Mr. T's kid? Yeah. There's no, look, the reason why he fought Drago's kid was because, and really at the end of the day, you could even stretch that because really for Creed to actually avenge his father's death, like in reality, in all seriousness, technically now, he would have to fight Drago, right? Like really at the end of the day, if you think about it, fighting his son isn't really avenging anyone's death because it wasn't Drago's son who killed his father. Right. So Rocky already avenged Apollo Creed's death by defeating Drago at the end of Rocky 4. Now I get that there's still, it's in the family. So I get that. Okay, well, that should have been your Creed 3. That should have been your final installment in the Creed series with Rocky or with not. To have him go on, there's no more to tell. I mean, what is there to tell? It was a great arc. I mean, that's the peak. You avenged your father's death. I mean, now it's what? You're the champion and you avenged your father's death. Well, where do you go from there? And Rocky's had his arc like 3 times now. Personally, I think Rocky Balboa's arc should have been left in Rocky Balboa because I think it was a great arc. He walks away from Adrian's tombstone and he says that thing that he said way back in the first movie, Adrian, we did it. Of course, way back then it was, Adrian, we did it. But he says it again and he walks away and he kind of fades up. That was a wonderful completion to a story. Then you have Creed where he's got cancer. And it's like, okay, whatever. And then you have Creed 2 where he goes home to his son. Okay, that's great. We don't need any more. That's the end. He's home with his son and we can imagine him living up. But with Adonis Creed, it ends perfectly with him and his baby and his wife at his dad's gravestone. That's it. That's his arc. He did it. That's the end. There's no need to do a Creed 3 because then you're just going to you can't get higher than that. The stakes can't be higher than that. So then what are you going to do? You're going to have to fabricate something now where, okay, some crazy lunatic boxer breaks into Adonis Creed's house, murders his wife and his child. And now But now it's like, whoa. And now the only way he's going to, now I'll fucking fight you in the ring. And it's like, well, that's where you got to go, because the absolute peak was avenging his father's death. And you did that in the second movie. You can't get any higher than that. Like, where are you going to go? Yeah. So I just think leave Creed alone. He's done. He's done. It was a good movie. It was done. That's how I feel about it. I don't know, Tony, how do you feel about it?
I agree. There really isn't. I mean, you've milked this series. I mean, look, there's not too many franchises out there that can have a successful spinoff like, you know, Rocky has successfully done here. And you can really argue and say that there's really only one weak film of this entire run, which would be Rocky V, the street fight. I mean, there are some okay moments in Rocky V, and I get what Stallone was doing by going back to the roots in that film. I mean, but yeah, like Dave said, I mean, where do you go with Adonis's character now? I mean, it's come full circle. Rocky is even come full circle in life. Everything is kind of again, you know, yeah, right. He's come full circle again. You know, I mean, with everything, you know, family, his personal life, his health, all that stuff, everything is, you know, one with the force, whatever. And what do you do? I mean, like I said, was he going to fight, you know, Mr. Teed's kid, or is he going to fight Tommy Gunn's kid in the street fight or whatever? Like,
and why would he do that? Because they have to do with Rocky. They have nothing to do with Creed.
Right.
Why would he fight the reason why he fought Drago again is because, well, we know why. It'd be no reason to fight Mr. T's kid. Why?
Right.
Makes no sense. So I agree with you 100%.
Cool.
100%.
Are we good?
Yeah, let's go just a little bit longer because we were yapping there. Let's see here. Let's see. There was a question here I saw about where'd it go? Something. Oh, here. Yeah, Lee. Am I going to say this right? Lee Scavidus. Am I saying that right? Creed 2 just gets worse every time, but you also asked a question. Oh yeah, thoughts on the upcoming Rambo 5. I am we didn't need another Rambo either, but I am, because even Rambo 4 ends, he's walking to his home, on his ranch. So even that's kind of like, he's home. But because Rambo from 2008 was such a fucking bloodbath fest, and it was just nothing but testosterone goodness. You know, it's like if I was Tim Allen from Home Improvement, it would be like, it's that kind of thing. I am very much I know I just dated myself. I'm very much looking forward to Rambo 5, because if it's anything like that Rambo, and if it's going to be what Sly likes to call a hard R, then why the fuck not? Let's watch Rambo one last time. Last Blood. Let's do it. Why the fuck not? Let's do it. Agree.
Next. Do like kind of a rapid fire here.
Okay, rapid fire. Let's go. Here we go. Dory Heather says, trilogies matter. Why leave a movie hanging at part 2? Because you don't have to, because not every movie that has a sequel necessarily has to be a trilogy. You know, there's only this idea that if you do a sequel, now you have to do a trilogy.
For example, Godfather 1 and 2. No need for Godfather 3.
No, there wasn't one. They did do one, but there wasn't one. And keep in mind, the more and more movies you make, the higher risk you are for having a shitty sequel. Yep. Sometimes stories can be told over 2 films. You don't have to do a trilogy. Yep. You don't have to do it. It's not like if you do a movie and then you do a sequel, by doing a sequel, you're now obligated to do a part 3. No, you should only be doing movies if there's more to tell. And in Creed's case, I don't think there is more to tell. And I certainly don't want them to make up something for the sake of doing a shitty movie. That's my opinion. Okay, let's see here.
Super Saiyan Ryu, thoughts on Last Dragon and Bloodsport? Well, I haven't seen Last Dragon. Bloodsport was a fun movie that I grew up watching. My brother was really into that film. He watched that film a lot. My brother was really into the martial arts, Van Damme movies of the 80s and shit. More so than I was. I was more into the horror films. He was into that shit. So obviously in the household, I would, see Bloodsport. It was a good flick. Frank Dukes, was that his name? The character? Van Damme?
I think so. I liked Bloodsport a lot. I also like a little Van Damme movie that is very similar to Bloodsport, at least kind of in some ways. Sorry?
Kickboxer?
No, it came out in 1996 or 7. I saw it in the movie theater. It sort of just came and went because it didn't get great reviews. And I actually kind of, it's a guilty pleasure, actually kind of because I like the whole redemption kind of thing, right? Anytime there's a redemption movie, you live vicariously through it. A movie called The Quest. And it stars.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and it stars him, and the late Roger Moore is in that movie too. Yeah, so yeah, it's kind of cool.
A quick one. Here's one from the Film Addict. This is a tough one. Favorite Jack Nicholson performance besides The Shining?
I'm gonna say One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Fuck, you stole mine, you bastard. Batman's Joker, the Joker in Batman.
Oh, that's good. That's good. That's really good.
I like him in one. I also like him in what's the movie there with fucking Tom Cruise? I almost said An Officer and a Gentleman. That's Richard Gere.
A Few Good Men.
Few Good Men. That's a good flick.
You can't handle the truth.
Did you wear that coat, Red? You goddamn right I did. Colin wrote down Jack's performances. I mean, The Shining, like he said.
Oh, he's great.
One Flew is, you know.
I love the scene in The Shining where I can't remember that. I wish I could think of the quote where he's sitting there and she's poor fucking Shelley Duvall. He's sitting there and he's like, I'm paraphrasing. He didn't say it, but you know, the tone is like, I am fucking working. Can't you see that I'm fucking working?
Yeah.
I don't want your fucking sandwich or whatever. Yeah, that's right. And Shelley Duvall's like, sure, Jack. Okay. Well, yeah, okay. I'll just go put it over there. Okay, sure. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I mean,
talk about an abusive relationship.
Yeah, Jack obviously is going to go down as one of cinema's most iconic actors. You know.
I mean, it was a fucking legend. Absolutely. Colin Altman says, "What are your thoughts on the new Pet Sematary?" Well, I'm looking forward to seeing it. I'm not crazy on the switch between Gage and Ellie for obvious reasons. People who follow my channel know why. But I've obviously it premiered at the South by Southwest Film Festival this past weekend, and it's getting really good reviews. Cool. So so far so good. So I'm looking forward to it coming out. But I always reserve judgment because I am a very picky individual when it comes to horror movies, and I tend not to just fall into the. You know, I want to. You know, I judge a movie on how I feel about it, not how everybody else feels about it. So, but I'm looking forward to it.
All right, next up, rapid fire.
Okay, let's see here. Let me go back.
Here.
Sorry?
We gotta be some Fast and Furious here. Keep it in the face.
Okay, Roger Dodger says, concept Halloween sequel update. It's coming. I have written everything down. I just need to sort of compartmentalize a few things, and then I have to record it. I actually have to make the video, but it is still in the process.
Your guys' thoughts on the upcoming Shazam movie? Have no desire to see it. That's my thought.
My thought is sort of the opposite of that, actually, is that I think it, but this also could be because I'm not emotionally attached. Like my buddy Bruce thinks the same way as you. He's like, oh, fuck, it just looks like fucking, I don't want to fucking see a Tom Hanks big kind of thing. So I actually am the opposite of that. And it's actually that style that actually appeals to me. And maybe it's because I'm not that you are, I'm just saying, but for me, maybe it's because I'm not attached to a lot of the superhero films that I can look at that as just a funny movie on its own, and the concept of this kid becoming a superhero, and just I actually think it looks kind of funny. Will I rush out to see it in the theater? Probably not. But will I watch it when it comes to Netflix? Yeah, probably. It actually appeals to me, funny enough. Anyway,
Skate Tune, Terminator 6 thoughts. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. That's pretty much all I can say.
Yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. You gotta be cautiously optimistic for this film.
Absolutely. Let's see here. Child's Play. Child's Play is in the room. Says, love the shirt, Dave. I love the Goonies. Yeah, the Goonies. Baby, Ruth, Rocky, Road.
Goonies never say die.
Chunk.
Zach asked your thoughts on the beloved animated series Star Wars Clone Wars from 2008. I've never watched it. Did you?
No, I didn't. I haven't watched any of the Star Wars animated shows because I just really have no desire.
I watched a few episodes of Rebels. Rebels is pretty good, but I never saw Clone Wars.
Anything outside of the movie universe, I just don't care about. That's just me.
Best Bruce Willis movie that's not Die Hard.
Ooh, best Bruce Willis movie that's not Die Hard. I'm gonna have to say,
Look Who's Talking. Technically, he's the voice of Mikey.
He is. I also liked him in that movie. I didn't mind him in this movie. I don't know why. I don't think it's a that movie he did with Sarah Jessica Parker. It slipped under the radar as well. What the fuck was that movie?
I gotta be honest. The only reason why I said Look Who's Talking, because outside of Die Hard, Look Who's Talking is the only other Willis. Oh, yeah, no. Yeah, outside of Die Hard. Well, no, I've seen The Expendables, but
he's done so. Look, back in the day, Looper's a good movie. Yes, Looper is a really good film. I enjoyed that movie. But he just phones it in now. I mean, he's like fucking Nicolas Cage. He's doing like 10 movies a year, which are just fucking. I don't know why he keeps phoning it in. Yeah. 12 Monkeys is good too. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Last Boy Scout. Yeah, Last Boy Scout has a very young Danielle Harris. So yeah, that's a good.
Wait, hold on, time out. Is this like legit? What are your thoughts on Tom Hanks doing the voice of Chucky? Is that for real?
No, I doubt that. I think we would know that Tom Hanks doing the voice of Chucky. Let's see, Tom Hanks doing the voice of Chucky.
I'm just picturing his character in Toy Story now. All of a sudden,
No, he's not doing the voice of Chucky.
Okay.
This person just wanted to rise, want some attention in the room.
I'm gonna type this. What do you guys think of Tom Hanks doing the voice of Chucky?
Here's a good one.
I'll be the voice of Chucky. Fucking right now. I'm ready. Sorry, go ahead.
Adam Carl Green, still keeping up with the lightning round questions here. Friday the 13th or Sleepaway Camp? Friday the 13th, twice.
Hands down. Look, Sleepaway Camp, if it wasn't for that ending, I think would just be lost in the mix. It's fun. It's a B, maybe even a C horror movie.
But it kills the film.
It's the ending, I think, that solidifies it. It's that because it was so shocking, because it's like, oh, she's like half and half. It's like, I think that's why it became so iconic, is because of that ending. But outside of that,
I meant kills. Never mind. I meant kills it, not like in a bad way.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Right. Yeah. Totally.
Okay. Dave, what do you think of Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket? I mean,
what do I think of Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket, sir?
God, I miss him. What's his name?
He died just a couple years
ago. He was in Chainsaw too. He was great.
He was.
Those Chainsaw. Remy.
Yeah. And you really believe that he was that fucking kind of hick.
Yeah.
You really believed him too. Yeah, he could.
I think he was in the Marines. I think for real.
He could have mouth crust in either side of his face, and you totally buy that. He really did have mouth crust in these.
Another rapid fire. What did you guys think, Dave and Tony, about Friday the 13th, 2009 remake?
Yeah, I didn't like it. I just thought it was just trying to be too many things at once, and I just wasn't a big fan of it.
Another rapid fire. What are your thoughts on a Mask reboot as a horror, as it was meant to have been with Jim Carrey? Maybe. Ooh. From a horror point of view, that's not a bad idea.
It's interesting.
It's not making the same movie.
Yeah, if I was a producer, I would be open to having whoever it was that had the concept coming into my office and pitching it to me.
Yeah.
I'd be open to listening.
All-time favorite stand-up comedian, Andy Kaufman.
Oh, yeah, I gotta go. All-time stand-up comedian. Jesus, I don't know.
But see, I like Robin Williams as well too, and I like old school Eddie Murphy, old school Richard Pryor.
I like old school George Carlin as well.
Old school George Carlin. But Andy Kaufman was so unique and he was different, and that's what I think I like about him. Versus he wasn't the traditional. But yeah, George Carlin, like old school George is great. Old school Richard Pryor is fucking hilarious. These guys were saying shit that today every SJW would be fucking offended.
Yeah.
You know what? Just a quick side note. We'll get back to you guys rapid fire questions. Apologize. This just goes to show you how much we've changed in a very short time. I don't know why it was in my recommendations, but it was, and I was happy I watched it. I watched a clip of Leonard Skinner in a performance in the year that unfortunately the accident happened of 77. This is them out in Oakland, California. And it was just a 7-minute video of them, doing Freebird live, which was, Freebird's a great Skinner song, along with Sweet Home Alabama, but most of us really like Freebird. And I'm watching this video. It's in California. They've got this huge Confederate flag behind them. And I'm just like, I can't believe that we were at a time in our country that we were so chill that a white band can go to a very democratic state, hang up the Confederate flag, and nobody said shit. On top of that, God damn, the 70s produced some fine looking women, because when they pans to the crowd, holy shit, it's just nothing but beautiful fucking women. I'm like, God damn, where are these women now? That's just a side note.
They're around. They're just in their 60s.
That's true. That is true. It's just crazy to just think how far we've evolved and how much has changed. Now you couldn't fucking do that shit. People would be totally offended. Just like with the stand-up comedians, the shit that they were saying back in the 70s, which is fucking hilarious, and nobody took it seriously. Now people would get their panties up in a bunch.
I agree. I absolutely agree. Okay, we'll go for another 5 minutes. 5 more minutes, and then we'll call it a show. Let's see here. Adam Carl Green says, thoughts on the new Terminator and rumors Arnold is playing a human. Well, we said that we're both cautiously optimistic for the new Terminator, and I haven't heard anything that Arnold is playing a human. So I don't have any thoughts on that. Tony, you have thoughts on that? No idea. Jason K says, thoughts on this, on a serious, the Guyver reboot movie that is similar for brutal violence to RoboCop. I haven't heard of
Guyver. I'm wondering, is that McGyver, like the TV show MacGyver?
The Guyver? I've never heard of the Guyver. I'm not too sure. Tristan says it is pretty stupid that people use the Confederate flag still. Jerome says,
you have to understand something when it comes to the Confederate flag. If you actually are intelligent and you know the history of the Confederate flag, and this is something that I just learned because I look up shit. I just don't jump the gun to presume that I know what I'm talking about. It means Southern pride. I mean, that's the reason why they had it. It was their pride. It was this is what the flag they wanted to be part of their country during the Civil War. It had nothing to do with slavery. Nothing at all. If you really do the research on it and you understand it, it's not meant to be racist. It's meant to be Southern pride. And that this was a pride thing for Southerners. It had nothing to do with that. And somehow, again, just the way our culture has evolved, everything now is offensive and they weren't fighting. Their pride was not fighting for slavery. Like, that's the thing. That's where you're incorrect. Tristan, you should really do research and do your homework and find out what the truth is, rather than just saying something to just say it because you sound like an idiot, because that's not what they were fighting for.
Matthew Moody says, thoughts on Stranger Things. Well, I'm a big fan of Stranger Things. I'm more of a fan of the first season than I am the second season. I did upload a couple of videos on Stranger Things in terms of the new season that's coming out on July the 4th. And I'm looking forward to season 3. I will be talking about Stranger Things on this channel. Tony and I will be doing a show on Stranger Things when more information starts to come down the line in regards to the show. Tony, your thoughts?
Sure. I just got to get caught up. I haven't watched the first season in such a long time. I got to have it fresh in my mind so that when me and Dave are talking about it, I want to, instantly. I mean, I know, I remember most of it. It's just, it's been a minute since I've watched it.
I just finished watching the first season and now I'm watching the second season. So let's see here. Just another psycho, says Jerome. He is doing that. He just trolls people and it's sick. I love reading. I love falling into context I have no context for. Let's see. Lead poisoning says, what are your thoughts on Rambo 5? Ridiculous. Well, we talked about that just about 10 or 15 minutes ago. I'm looking forward to it. Really looking forward to it. And I think Tony is as well. Let's see here. Dory Heather says, so much for ending at 9:30 p.m. Yes, well, you must have left the room because we said we were going to go a bit longer. We're going to go for another 2 more minutes. That's it. 2 more minutes. Then we're calling it a night. Let's see here. I'm going to just scroll back. See if there's somebody we haven't. Let's see here.
Okay, I just needed to clarify something really quick so that this person is well aware of it. Okay, you have to understand the difference, Tristan, between with regards to the Civil War, because he's trying to correct me on this. Okay, the Civil War started in the United States because of the uncompromising difference between the North and the South, between the free and the slave states, meaning that there were states in the North that actually had slaves. They had house slaves, maids, butlers, things like that. But these people were free. They could go home to their houses and things like that. Whereas the South, they wanted to, obviously, they wanted to control these people, keep them on their land, not be free. That was the difference. It wasn't fighting. You have to, not to get like totally off subject on it. I mean, it's a gray area, but it's not just primarily because of slavery. It was just a difference of opinions on how people, because I mean, technically they still have slaves today. If you're a maid or a butler in someone's house, I mean, technically by definition, that's a slave. You know what I mean? So the flag with the Confederate flag in itself, it did not represent that. It represented what they wanted to be. They wanted to separate themselves from the North and be their own country. Had nothing to do with what they were doing. That's asinine to think that. But as it evolved through the years, it evolved into a Southern pride thing. And if you talk to a lot of African Americans, most of them are not offended by this. Believe me, I've done my research this and asked them this question. So
there's even quite a few Southern African Americans who would fly the flag as well.
Yes, that's what I wanted to say. Like,
yeah, I mean, it is there were a lot of them that would do it. Funny, ironically enough, unbeknownst to a lot of people. Anyway, okay, so yeah,
there's no slaves today. So then, what do you call it when people are showing up to someone's house and cooking them their food, cleaning their bathrooms, making their beds? I mean, come on, that's basically the same job that slaves were doing back in the day. It's no difference.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Okay, let's end on a movie question. Let's end on a movie question. All right, last question of the night, folks. Zach Gaxiola says, do you guys consider Obi-Wan Kenobi to be anywhere among your all-time favorite Star Wars character? P.S. He is my fave. He is not my favorite, but I do like Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I like the wisdom and he has some of my favorite quotes. I mean, I think my all-time favorite quote, well, there's two of them. There's a lot of great quotes, but two of my favorites are from him, and they're from the first movie, Hope. And one is, you must do what you feel is right. Of course, he says, you must do what you feel is right, of course. And then there's the one where he says, who's the more foolish, the fool or the fool who follows him? And that, I have a little plaque with that behind those doors there out in my home studio, and it sits on a coffee table, and it says, who's the more foolish, the fool or the fool who follows him? And that's totally true. It just simply means, kind of like what George Bush tried to say at that, press conference. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me something, I'll never get fooled. Do you remember when he fucked that up? Do you remember when he's sitting there and he's trying to say, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. But he fucking just butchers the shit out of it. I miss your president, George W. Bush. He was great for fodder. So I like Obi-Wan because of what he represents, that wisdom. But my favorite character, I'm a little biased because he's my favorite actor. It's got to be Han Solo. What about you, Tony?
Sure, why not? My mind is still set on this Confederate flag debate right now.
Oh, okay.
It's still there. Oh, here's another positive thing. Okay, Dukes of Hazzard was not racist at all. General Lee had the Confederate flag on top of the car, and there's zero racist about that. So you have to understand, the flag was never intended, and back in the day, it was not looked upon as a racist thing. It's become a racist thing because of the SJWs today, because they're finding everything nowadays to become, everything is racist. I mean, it really is. I mean, we're going to get to a point in this country where we are slowly evolving into the Demolition Man. If you ever seen that film, Demolition Man, watch that movie. That's what we are evolving to, that we are becoming so politically correct that we're probably going to get fined in our house for things that we say that are politically incorrect.
Demolition Man is a good movie, and it's one of the most underrated Stallone movies that I've seen in a while. Or that I've seen in a while. I saw it years ago. I mean, it's one of the most underrated Stallone movies, period. And it's a movie that when you think of his filmography, you actually don't tend to think of quite a bit. It seems to get lost, and I don't know why. It's a great movie, but I do know what you're saying. It's a conversation certainly for another time, and it's a hot button issue. This is what I will say. This is where I will end this.
Well, here's the thing. You want to say that this Confederate flag is racist. Our American flag is racist and what it represents. And everything in the history of our country and how we took over the indigenous tribes here in their land and shit. I mean, if you really want to get technical and be an asshole about it, fine, let's be an asshole about it, because our flag that's currently representing our country should be fucking burned. Okay, yeah, I'm saying it because of the history of our country and what it represents and the shit that we've done in this country. Ugh.
Tony, he's pissed. He's pissed, folks. Look out.
I do that shit because you're going to sit there and point out one flag and you don't know the truth behind the history when our current flag really represents a lot of racism.
Here's the situation, okay? And I want to end on this, okay? It is important when you're having these types of conversations that your opinions are informed. Whether you are the reason why is because you want to be taken seriously. We are living in a culture where everybody appears to be outraged over something. The problem is that people come from an emotional place, and I understand that. But at the end of the day, your opinion, whether it's my opinion, whether it's Tony's opinion, whether it's anybody in the chat room's opinion, if you're talking about a hot button issue, whether it's political, whether it's in entertainment, whatever the situation is, if you are not informed on that issue, your opinion means nothing. It doesn't matter what you think of your opinion. If you're not informed of the issues and you know what those issues are, and you are able to come to the table with a certain amount of facts, objective facts, you can still have an opinion, of course, but do not think that I'm going to care about that opinion. And the perfect example of that are those that feel that the Ghostbusters movie from 2016, they didn't do a sequel to that movie because it was for women. And there was that outrage culture around that they just don't want to do a sequel to that movie because it's women and they're trying to oppress women, and they don't because it's ladies. They didn't do a sequel to that movie because it didn't do well at the box office. Mm-hmm. Had the movie made $800 million at the box office and they still decided to not do a sequel, I would be standing with you saying, that's fucking stupid. I would say that doesn't make any sense. From a business perspective, that doesn't make any sense. But the fact of the matter is that there were a lot of people that become very emotional, very quick. We're very quick. The fuck you. We need these outlets. You want an outlet and you want a platform to express your outrage over whatever it is. Whatever it is. Politics, entertainment, movies, whatever it is. The problem is, if you're not informed, if you don't do your research, and when I say research, I don't mean you got to sit there for days and over books and, smoking cigarettes. But what I'm saying is if you're not informed on the topic for which you're talking about and understand the nuances for which you're talking about, the tiny details that tend to slip through the cracks when you just read headlines, or when you just read a paragraph of an article, or when you're just reading one side. The one thing that we tend to do in this world and in this culture is we tend to watch videos and read articles and listen to people that do nothing but confirm our bias. It is vitally important that you don't come to me or to Tony to find out, or let me say that again. You don't come to me or to Tony or to anybody online to just have us confirm what you think.
Right.
You want to be challenged. You want to have other points of view. Whatever it is, I don't care. I don't give a fuck what the topic is. We don't all have to agree, but when you're going to express your opinion, it must come from a place of being informed about the issue you're talking about. When you ask your doctor, do you think my lump is cancer? Well, do you want an informed medical opinion? Yes. He's coming from an informed place. Because of this, because the way this looks, because of the size, because of that, and he can give you that informed opinion. And that's how it has to be with everything. Your opinion, if it's coming from an emotional place, okay, where you're jumping on bandwagons, whatever it is, if it's coming from an emotional place, and a lot of it, a lot of times it does, your opinions matter to you. And they may matter to the people that share your outrage, but objectively speaking, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me. It's like last week or 2 weeks ago when we had Darnell Weeks, the movie fan. I'm assuming it was him. It was from another account. To be fair, it may have been a troll. We don't know. But regardless, saying that the only reason why people hate Halloween Resurrection is because Busta Rhymes is black.
Right.
Well, that is a completely misinformed, uneducated, coming from an emotional place. I don't give a fuck if he's black. I don't care if he's white or purple or Asian. I don't like Busta Rhymes in the movie. I don't like the movie not just because Busta Rhymes is in the movie. It's because it's a garbage movie.
Yep.
So you need to come.
Just to clarify something here, like what someone said, why don't I just block the guy, Tristan, who I'm debating with? No, because I'm debating with him. Tristan hasn't said anything to offend me. He hasn't attacked me. Me and him are debating on our viewpoints of what we've done our own research on. It's not like we're sitting here. I'm not calling him names. He's not calling me names. We're maturely debating. So I'm not going to just hit the block button just to block someone because we don't agree on something. That's the whole point of debating.
Well, that's exactly right.
I've got to be open to hearing him, just like he's got to be open to hearing me. That's how mature people debate. If he got defensive and started attacking me, that's different. But
yes, exactly. And when people cannot debate the facts, when they cannot debate the situation at hand, they then resort to attack. When they can't attack the debate, they attack the character.
Right.
So when they have nothing to say, you'll see, well, you're just fucking stupid. Well, you're a fucking idiot. Well, that has nothing to do with anything, right? So it's just important, folks, that when we want to debate whatever it is, you must be informed. If you want me to care about your opinion, it better be coming from a place of being informed, especially when we're talking about the entertainment industry and movies, because I know a lot about what I'm talking about. That doesn't mean I'm always right, but I have a lot of experience being a voice actor, working with producers, directors, actors. I have a lot of experience and knowledge on this industry. Doesn't mean I'm right. I'm not perfect, but you have to come with your guns loaded.
Yep.
If you want me to care about what you're saying, right? And that's how it should be over everything. If you just say, well, I just think you're fucking stupid, McRae. Okay. Go ahead. I don't care. It doesn't affect me. Right. So it's just important that regardless of what we're debating, we can have a healthy debate as long as it's coming from a place of maturity and you don't resort to character attacks. Once you start to see a character attack, then you've lost me because it has nothing to do with it. Yeah, well, you just have a big head.
Right. Well, and the difference here between me and Tristan, first of all, Tristan's typing, so he can't. It's hard for me I have to keep in mind like how he's intending what he's saying. So I have to dial it back. Even though I get ramped up there a little bit, I have to dial it back out, I'm like, hold on, wait, how is he intending it versus how? Because he can hear how I'm intending it. I can't hear how he's intending it. So you have to keep that in consideration when you are debating. And that's why I don't believe just jumping the gun and blocking someone, because again, had he said like Dave said, if you're an idiot, you're saying this, you're saying, like he didn't say anything like that. We're talking about something here.
Sure. No, I have no issues with what he's saying. He's forming his opinion. He's being articulate.
I will be back next week. People were saying that they won't see me again. No, I'll be back.
No. It's good. It's good. Look, it all like again, and that's why I wanted to turn what was happening between Tony and Tristan, the debate, into a positive, because I wanted to say that this is something that it can be done, and it's so important that you surround yourself with different opinions and different views, because the problem, like I said, and we're all guilty of it at some point in our lives on some level. Me too. We surround ourselves, generally speaking, and I try to not do this because you need to hear all sides, but we tend to surround ourselves with people that think like us and that share our same views. And we only watch videos that confirm how we think. And that's not the right thing to do. It's important to hear all sides, because then and only then can you make an objective, informed opinion, whatever it is that you're talking about. Yeah. So
it's a key thing. You have to remember, and this is very, 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 very important to remember. Back in the day, in order to have slaves, you needed to be rich. That was just like today. Rich people, it's a very small percentage of people in this country. A lot of Southerners, a lot of true Southerners who did not have slaves, they were forced into a situation that they literally had no choice. They were fighting for their land, okay? But the flag to them represented a pride. It didn't represent what they had to fight for, unfortunately. So you have to, like, when you're doing your research and your understanding of where the Confederate flag comes from, I get what you're saying, and I agree with you. Yes, the history behind it, the history behind a lot of the Southern morals from the people with money, which, by the way, were Democrats back in the day who started all this in the South. They weren't Republicans. Those were Democrats. So for the liberals out there that may attack me afterwards, you better make sure you remember that. The majority of the people who lived in the South back in the day didn't have slaves, but it was their pride. It was their heritage. So that's what I'm saying, that yes, while unfortunately the flag has a stigma to it, like a lot of flags have a lot of stigma to it in their history, unfortunately. I mean, Japan, they attacked us at Pearl Harbor. Bad history, bad blood.
It's just important to remember that there's such a thing as nuance.
Yes,
it's the spice of life.
Canadian, they're perfect.
Right.
Exactly.
No. But it's the situation where we must understand nuance. Life is full of gray. It's not black and white, no pun intended, but it isn't. It's full of gray. It's full of nuance. And if we get rid of nuance, or if we get rid of context, we're in serious trouble. And it's very important that we understand that there's a lot of nuance. So anyway, let's call it a night there before we go on too far. I appreciate everybody who tuned in. And of course, the first hour and 45 minutes or so of the stream was talking about Blair Witch. If you're just tuning in now and you want to see that, it'll be up online momentarily. So again, I appreciate everybody tuning in. If you want to follow me, all my links are in the description. Tony's Instagram is in the description as well. Make sure you follow him, guys, because he's going to be posting some awesome Michael Myers photos in the coming weeks. So if you haven't been following him, make sure you follow him now. Right, Tony?
That's right. We got the mask here. We got the jumpsuit. I'm just waiting. I actually got someone to customize and make me an authentic original 1978 Michael knife. So that was the last piece of the puzzle that I needed to complete the ensemble for the guy who's going to be modeling in the Myers whole outfit and whatnot. And it's going to be taking liberties on what we saw in the original film and all the other films, and then coming up with my own creative spin on original portraits with my buddy dressed up as Michael Myers.
Awesome. I can't wait to see that. I really can't wait to see it. Because you understand light and shadow, and I'm really looking forward to seeing some cool classic Michael Myers shots. So this is going to be a lot of fun. Anyway, guys, tune in next week. As usual, Tony and I don't quite know what we're talking about yet. It sort of organically evolves as the week goes on. I will let you guys know next weekend what we will be talking about. So in the meantime and in between time, I will talk to you guys soon. You guys rock. You know who you are. You know who the fuck you are. You all rock.
Yes, sir.
All right. I'll talk to you soon. All right. Cheers.
Later.